your community operates? And how are you standing up for your communities in the face of the fear? And if you're someone who voted for Trump because of his immigration stance, is this what you voted for?
I'm Marjorie Yeagan. Then it's Michael Curry, CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers and board member of the NAACP. Donald Trump's budget proposal includes measures to slash funding for hospitals all across Massachusetts. Can neighborhood health clinics offer a solution? Plus, reflections on 5 years out from the murder of George Floyd and the racial reckoning that stalled. It's all ahead on the 11 o'clock hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH and 88.5 NEPM.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Representatives from Ukraine and Russia have held a second round of peace talks in Istanbul, Turkey today. These lasted for only an hour. This comes as Ukraine's security service says it will continue to strike Russia's bombers and other military targets as long as Russian attacks continue on Ukraine. NPR's Joanna Kakissis reports from Kyiv. Ukraine claims it hit more than 40 Russian warplanes deep in Russian territory.
In a statement, the head of Ukraine's security service, Lieutenant General Vasyl Malyuk, said Russia uses these planes to bomb Ukraine nearly every night. He wrote on social media, "Our strikes will continue as long as Russia terrorizes Ukrainians with missiles and Shahed drones." In this weekend's operation, officially dubbed Spiderweb, Malyuk explained that it was a task that took more than 18 months to plan. It involved hiding drones inside the roofs of wooden cabins placed on trucks. Malyuk said the roofs were opened remotely and the drones flew out to hit the Russian bombers. Russia acknowledges the bombers were hit, but is disputing the scale. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
An official with the Department of Homeland Security has issued a statement about the suspect in yesterday's attack on a group of peaceful marchers in Boulder, Colorado. The official says the suspect came to the U.S. on a visa that expired more than 2 years ago and that he had earlier applied for asylum. Officials say the suspect threw incendiary devices into a group of people in Boulder yesterday. Alex Osante was an eyewitness.
One of them he threw inside of a group, and one lady lit on fire from head to toe. And then the other 4 people were also injured and in a fire, but not as bad as the first one.
The marchers had been gathering weekly in Boulder to highlight the plight of Israeli citizens held in Gaza. Authorities say they're investigating the attack as an act of terrorism. The city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, is raising money for a $105 million charitable trust. Organizers say they'll use the donations to repair harm for the Tulsa race massacre. From member station KWGS, Max Bryan has more.
As many as 300 people were killed and dozens of homes and businesses leveled in the 1921 Tulsa race massacre when a white mob razed the city's prosperous black neighborhood of Greenwood. Tulsa Mayor Monroe Nichols announced the trust, which will put millions of dollars toward housing, reducing blight, land acquisition for descendants, and spurring economic growth.
There is not one Tulsan, no matter of their skin color, who wouldn't be better off today had the massacre not happened.
The mayor's announcement follows city officials' creation of a commission to explore reparations for descendants of massacre survivors and people who live in the area today. For NPR News, I'm Max Bryan in Tulsa.
You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. With the Department of Homeland Security now cracking down on sanctuary jurisdictions, officials in targeted cities in Western Mass are calling on President Trump to reconsider and in some cases get his facts straight. Springfield Republican reports that Springfield, Amherst, Northampton, and Holyoke all made the new DHS sanctuary jurisdiction list, as well as Hampshire, Franklin, and Berkshire counties. And after learning of the new list, local municipal leaders pushed back at the federal administration. For instance, Springfield Mayor Dominic Sarno says he's always maintained that Springfield is not a sanctuary city. He says, though, he was vetoed at a city council vote to make it a sanctuary, and the council then overrode it. Worcester Polytechnic Institute has laid off 24 employees as part of its cost-cutting measures related to rising costs and uncertainty regarding the policies of the Trump administration when it comes to funding higher ed. The Telegram and Gazette reports that the college, which has a total enrollment of 7,420, is the largest university in Worcester, announced in a letter to students and staff that cuts are needed in order to keep WPI on stable financial ground. In sports, the Red Sox are back at friendly Fenway. Tonight they host the LA Angels. In the forecast, sun, clouds, low 70s today, light clouds and 60s overnight, sunny and upper 70s tomorrow, and then mostly sunny, upper 80s on Wednesday. We may even see 90 on Thursday. 63 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One with the Capital One Saver Card. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday at the Boston Public Library. Governor Maura Healey will be with us June 25th at the library from 11 to noon. Hello, Jim, and much welcome to the listeners in Western Massachusetts.
Hey, Marjorie, we're thrilled, by the way, that the first hour of the show is going to be carried in Western Massachusetts, and we urge you all out there to participate in the show by giving us a call or a text or whatever, but welcome. The Department of Homeland Security is walking back a list that released just Friday, identifying more than what they call 200 sanctuary cities and counties across the country. It said we're defying federal immigration law. In Massachusetts, that included Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Springfield, Holyoke, and a bunch more. The list is just the latest in the Trump administration's effort to rewrite the narrative around immigration in America. In April, Trump called for the administration to create this list. Get this, saying the lack of cooperation from local jurisdictions amounts to a, quote, lawless insurrection. And if anybody in America knows about lawless insurrections, it would be Donald J. Trump. Meanwhile, in Milford, Massachusetts this weekend, 18-year-old student, this is one of the worst stories yet in Massachusetts, Marcelo Gomez da Silva. He was taken by immigration officials while he's in a car on his way with his friends to play volleyball. He was a member of the school band. He was planning to perform at Milford High's commencement on Sunday, but was behind bars instead. This after raids on Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard a few days ago, and in Worcester last month, sparking protests. So the phone and text lines are open at 877-301-8970. An immigration check-in. Governor Healey is calling for more information from the feds around immigration enforcement. The Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, has also put out an information kit for people. What do you make of how state officials' response has been as communities across the state, farm workers in Western Mass, restaurant workers on the Cape and Islands, students are now living in fear of being detained? How is this fear changing the community you're living in, and how's it affecting you? I mean, it is likely that your mother or a friend's mother is being taken care of. A healthcare worker is undocumented. You've probably been served in a restaurant by an undocumented person.
Your nanny.
Exactly. An undocumented person is either a nanny or is producing the food that you're eating.
Housekeeper.
What kind of reaction are you having to all this? How do you feel about how our leaders in the state are dealing with it? The number is 877-301-8970. You know, the people of Milford are rising up as best they can. I mean, it's unclear what people can do. When we had Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General, in here a few weeks ago, right before she put out this kit, she admitted there's not a hell of a lot that state officials can do. And by the way, this notion that it is a lawless insurrection if you're either a de facto sanctuary city or formally declared a sanctuary city is total BS. It just means there's not going to be affirmative collaboration with ICE officials who, I mean, I live a mile away, by the way, a mile and maybe 1.2 from where Ozturk was snatched off the streets of Somerville, that tough student who was then incarcerated in Louisiana for what seemed like forever. How does it impact on people around, even people who perceive themselves to be totally safe, don't you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I've heard anecdotally from friends who have housekeepers. They don't know what their immigration status is. They have nannies. They don't know what their immigration status is. It's kind of a delicate discussion to get into there, and they're extremely worried. Listen to this. We have a person who just texted us. I have 3 kids, 2 on medication we couldn't pay for ourselves. I'm from El Salvador and present very dark-skinned along with one of my kids, but we are all citizens. I was naturalized, so the 14th Amendment could affect me. And we live in a white town, and they are obviously very worried. What will I or my children do that makes somebody angry and reports us to ICE? And they assume that because they're dark-skinned and maybe they have an accent, that they should put them in the back of a truck and haul them out of here.
You know, we've also spoken to doctors and people in the education field who have talked about the fear is so intense that kids are not going to doctor's appointments. Some parents are too scared to send their kids to school for fear they're going to be snatched. And talk about fear. And this is, when you see Tom Homan, the so-called border czar or whatever the hell he is, talk and try to do this tough guy kind of thing, the goal is to create fear in people. And if you thought you were immune, read the story of this young high school kid. Here's a clip of a Milford high school student who was in the car and on his way to play volleyball when ICE detained his friend just a couple of days ago. Here he is.
Hit, and I began crying. No facial expressions, just tears coming down my eyes. I didn't see him run a red light. I didn't see him do anything necessarily illegal. We were just on our way. I always knew that this was a system where it could get people who were undocumented and committed bad things, but now it's kind of turning into a system that just kicks everybody out just based on your status.
You know, we would love, that kid is really smart. We would love to hear from Trump supporters, because wasn't the notion that we were only going to be going after
We've heard from many
rapists and murderers?
Yeah.
Oh, we're hearing from? What are they saying?
If they're here illegally, get rid of them.
Is that including this Milford High School student?
And you know what's interesting about this Milford High School student? He started kindergarten at 5 years old, so he was obviously here. I don't know what age he was when he got here, 2, 3, or 4. So he was brought here by his parents.
Yeah, where are they going to send him?
He's lived here his whole life.
Right, where are they going to send him?
I don't know. I don't know where they're going to send him.
Did you read about that story? There's a red.
And by the way, Ramasa Osterk, don't forget. She's back now because she didn't do anything wrong except co-write an op-ed. She was here in the country legally.
Yeah, but she was in jail for weeks and weeks despite having done nothing wrong.
Mahmoud Khalil is still in jail. He was here with a green card. He was also here legally, and he is still in this horrible detention center.
For these Trump people who are saying deport them all, that kind of trolling, why don't you text back? Why don't you call us at 877-301-8970? And why don't you cite for us the time during the campaign when Donald Trump said, I'm going to deport 18-year-old high school students? Or did you read the story in the New York Times? I know you're away, about this Missouri community that voted overwhelmingly for Trump. It was the New York Times the last couple of days, where they took away, I believe it was a server or a worker at a local restaurant, and all these Trump supporters, to their credit, are standing up for her. And one of the great quotes from a woman who did vote for Trump in the New York Times said something like, I didn't know he meant they were going to take away moms, was her line.
Well,
and she's leaving kids behind here.
The president used to talk about bad hombres. That's who he's going to do, the people that had committed crimes. And by the way, as we all know, immigrants are much less likely to commit crimes in the United States.
Not according to Donald
citizens.
Trump.
Trump opens his mouth and lies. I mean, he was really off the deep end over the weekend, reposting this thing about Joe Biden being executed and replaced by some robot or something.
You know, as we said a minute ago, we're going to get to your calls in a second. This is our first day of our first hour of the show being carried in Western Massachusetts. Bob and Donna text, hello, Marjorie and Jim. Wife and I listen to you regularly out here in Great Barrington, because obviously we stream.
Yes.
But today we're on the radio starting today.
What a nice town that is. My daughter went to camp near there.
Here's another one. Just the first hour in Western Mass? What about a-hole? We do a thing Thursday afternoons based on a subreddit about who is the a-hole. And this texter says, you're going to have to move it into the top hour of the show.
Yeah,
I'm not sure they're ready for that quite yet.
Segment of a lot of our listeners.
Let's go to Bob.
The a-hole.
Bob in Fall River, you're first on BPR. Welcome to the show, Bob. Hi.
Morning, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi.
I have a homemaker who comes in twice a week. She's of Cape Verdean ancestry. She's a green card holder and married to a citizen. But one never knows the way these guys are operating in the streets. If, conceivably she might be snatched off the street also. They have snatched green card holders.
Yes.
In Florida, they took a kid off the streets who had a birth certificate indicating he was born in Florida, and they still held him for 2 days. These people don't like to admit they're wrong, and obviously are not concerned about something as arcane as due process. So, one wonders. It's a difficult situation for a lot of people.
By the way, have you spoken to your housekeeper about how she feels about all this, or no?
Well, she feels safe because she's married to an American citizen, and she's a green card holder, and that reduces the time she has to be a green card holder from 5 years down to 2.5. But again, we have these people who are operating on their own norms. If you remember, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary said before a Senate committee that habeas corpus was a right granted to the president to deport people. She's totally ignorant of what that great right, a right so great that it was included in the body of the Constitution, she interprets it entirely differently.
By the way, if you didn't hear that, let's just stop there.
Monomaniacal, megalomaniacal.
Bob, that was an excellent call. Kristi Noem, the Secretary of DHS, who killed her dog, I guess you could say intentionally, not too long ago, was before a Senate committee, and a New Hampshire senator just said simply, tell us what habeas corpus means. Did she have any clue?
She had no idea.
No idea.
It allowed the president to throw
to
people
deport
out of the country.
people.
I'm so glad Bob called from Fall River, though. I've said this before to you. When I was a kid, Fall River was like 70% Portuguese. Yeah. People were coming. I remember when I was in school, every week there'd be 2 or 3 more kids speaking Portuguese from the Azores. We had more credit unions than any city in the country at the time I was growing up. And some of these people were here legally, and some of these people were not here legally. And it was fine. It was just fine. And now we have absolutely gone bananas about this.
And also, what's the number one concern about people in this country? The economy.
Right.
You know what happened to the economy if Trump succeeded at deporting at the quote that Trump texted a minute ago, everybody who is here legally, regardless of what else they have allegedly done?
Do you think you see so many people with foreign-sounding names in the trades? Because you are getting people at cheaper prices.
Let's go to Paul on the Road. You're on BPR with Marjorie Egan and me, Jim Browdy. Welcome. Hi.
Hi. I'm a long-time listener, frequent visitor, but first-time caller.
We love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. My husband is a Holocaust survivor. He came from Vienna in 1936. His father was picked up off the street on Kristallnacht in Vienna and taken away. And his mother had no idea where he was taken, and she had to go to Gestapo headquarters. And after a lot of fighting and arguing, she found out he was taken to Dachau. Fortunately, at that time, Hitler was letting the Jews go if they promised to leave Austria, and he was able to get out, and they came to the United States. But every time I hear ICE picking people up off the street and whisking them away with no explanation and without telling their relatives where they're going, it just sends chills up my spine. This is the kind of country we're living in now. I just feel that the democracy is no longer, and there is nothing we could do about it at this stage.
Well, the only place, that was a very powerful call, Paul, and we're glad you made it. The only place where you'll get disagreement, from me at least, is there's nothing we can do about it. Paula, thanks for the call. People have to voice their displeasure. At some point, people have to do what people do in other democracies, which is take to the streets and say this is not our country.
Listen to Paula from Hingham. Conservatives often criticize Jews for not fighting back against the Germans. Perhaps what the people are doing now by defying ICE and standing up to them is exactly what we should be doing in the face of evil, lest history repeat itself. And Laura from Milford said she participated in the Milford protest. So proud of my town. There's a lie being perpetuated that only criminals are being picked up. That is clearly not the case. And earlier, Ken from Coventry said, in my community in Rhode Island, if I see an unidentified mask-wearing ICE agent, can I ask to see his identification? And if not, why not? And when you see pictures of a lot of these ICE agents, they have masks covering their whole face. All you can see is their eyes. They have, bulletproof vests on and stuff, and they have no IDs on. Why are they all covering their faces?
Why do you think they are, Marjorie?
I don't know, Jim.
Because it's scarier. And the more fear you can cause in a community, both to an individual and their surrounding community, the more successful they are. By the way, Megan in Springfield, Mass. texted, thanks. Has this show just been newly added? 88.5. So happy to hear it.
Oh,
so are we,
we'll
we should say.
On the first hour.
Now, before one of you Trump fans, and we'd love you to call at 877-301-8970, said that caller made up the fact that Kristi Noem had no idea what habeas corpus was. Here's the head of Homeland Security testifying in front of the Senate.
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am.
Suspend their
habeas
right
corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea.
That was Maggie Hassan, by the way, United States Senator from New Hampshire. Good for her.
Well, I mean, every time I see Kristi Noem, she shot her puppy. I mean, what more do we need to say?
And a goat. Didn't you tell me she shot a goat?
And a goat.
By the way, that's in her own book. That is not. She admitted that. I guess she was proud.
Yeah, if your neighbor said to you, I shot my puppy a couple of weeks ago, but I'll babysit your kids if you want to go to the movies. I think you'd say, no, I think not.
She does these tough guy radio commercials, too, which you hear from time to time throughout our state.
Yeah, this weird thing where she stood in front of a bunch of half-naked men by the dozen.
In El Salvador. In the prison,
Very tight clothing and her $50,000 Rolex watch. Yeah. And a lot of makeup.
Jennifer in Holliston, welcome to BPR. Hi.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi.
So I've been thinking a lot. I was in the military. I was in the Coast Guard when I was young. I'm not young anymore. And just thinking about the oath I took, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It does go on to say that I obey the orders of the president, but I think that was assuming the president would follow the Constitution. And I think about what would I do if I were in now receiving these orders. And the leadership, the letting their military down, it's devastating to me. Now I'm an out gay woman with a transgender child, and I feel so let down by my country.
Yeah.
That I served,
Yeah, no, I think a lot of us feel as though Donald Trump is out to get us. I mean, it's people, they're immigrants in this company. It's people who came from other countries who are here legally with green cards and all the authorization they're supposed to get. They're on the way out the door. It's going after hospitals, it's going after healthcare, it's going after cancer research.
She's got a trans kid. How about people who chose to serve in the military?
Yeah, that's right.
And put their lives at risk who are trans being essentially kicked out the door while the guy who ordered it used this phony bone spur thing to make sure that he didn't have to serve himself. I mean, it's grotesque. Jennifer, we really appreciate your call and hope you call again soon. Thanks for making
But here's the thing we hear all the time. Here's one more.
Yeah.
His taking a course, and his mother was an immigrant from Guatemala, came here legally. Our agreement upon illegal immigrants should not be getting a free ride, so until they come here legally, they should be deported. And a lot of the people that are, as we just finished saying, are here. They came from another country, but they went through the legal steps, and they got the needed documentation, including this Khalil guy who had the green card holder.
Columbia guy,
who is still in a detention center. So he was here legally, and he's disappeared basically like these other people.
Well, Abrego Garcia, the lawyers admitted in court on day one that they made a mistake, and all there's been since is lying about they never admit the mistake again. And as we all know, the Supreme Court of the United States ordered that the administration facilitate, was their word, the release of Abrego Garcia. Trump, a week later, to Terry Moran, ABC News reporter, said, yes, I could get him out. And they haven't.
And like Vance, the vice president, keeps saying he's done terrible things. He's an MS gang member. And I want to, the reporter, that I said to myself, well, if he's done such terrible things, tell me what they are.
Exactly.
They never tell you what they are.
I wonder why. Why do you think that is?
If they knew what they were, they would tell you what they were.
No, they know what they are. They don't exist. Of course they would tell you. Remember the old line, Richard Nixon? He has a secret plan to get us out of Vietnam. You know why it's a secret?
No plan.
Exactly. Debbie in Martha's Vineyard. Hi, Debbie. You've had a hard time, too, down there. Hello.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. Can you hear me?
We can perfectly. Thanks.
Oh, great. Yes, I'm a regular listener. Sometimes
Thanks.
you drive me crazy, but I really appreciate you.
We drive ourselves crazy. It's okay. Go ahead.
I'm so grateful that you're talking about this because we have to keep saying it out loud over and over and over again. The truth. We had 20 people ripped off our streets last Tuesday. Big men with heavy vests and masks over their heads. Their jackets. Some of them said ICE. Some said FBI. Some said police. So we know our local police were involved. They stopped these trucks of young men, hardworking men, going to work in the morning and just hauled them out. We don't know who they were. One guy had a video camera, and he videoed this guy, and he talked to him, and he asked him who they were, and he wouldn't say, and he asked them to take off their masks, and they wouldn't do it, and then they threatened him. So we don't know who they were, who they took. We don't know where they took them. We don't know how long they'll be gone. We don't know if they're taken home or taken to El Salvador. Anyway, I wanted to say that out loud. It happened here, too, on Martha's Vineyard. It's happening everywhere. It's so illegal, unconstitutional, immoral, disgusting, like everything he does. Thank you for, what I can do about it is tell people, and that's what I'm doing.
I was just going to say that. That is absolutely something we can all do when we experience it. Debbie, thanks. And by the way, the humanitarian part, as you mentioned, is huge, obviously. But also, as the Globe or the New York Times wrote a piece this weekend, how dependent the economies of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket are on undocumented workers who have not committed horrible crimes.
No doubt they get singled out because a lot of the people in Martha's Vineyard were very nice to the group that was sent
the
out.
Venezuelans.
Yeah, the Venezuelans. Anyway, we're going to take more of your calls and texts after this quick break. You are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH 885 NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The number 887. What's the number, Jim?
No, it's not. I'm not.
877-301-8970.
Good recovery there.
I know. I was mixing up the other number. But we'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
In Russia, the influence of the Orthodox Church has grown under Vladimir Putin.
Church officials were doing their best to convince the state that the Orthodox tradition should be the basis of the new Russian society, and they succeeded.
But many Russians are uncomfortable with the interplay between church and state. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Direct Tire and Auto Service, offering a full range of services including brakes, shocks, diagnostics, and oil changes. Direct Tire and Auto Service, not just service, customer service. DirectTire.com. And Newport Mansions, presenting the 29th Annual Newport Flower Show, June 20th to the 22nd at Rosecliff. This year's theme, A Floral Affair, honors Rosecliff's original owner, Teresa Fair Ulrichs. Tickets at newportmansions.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the BPL tomorrow, Wednesday and Friday. The governor joins us for an hour. Take your questions and ours on June 25th from 11 to 12. If you're just tuning in, we're taking calls about the state of Trump's immigration enforcement in Massachusetts. The DHS, Homeland Security, list labeling sanctuary cities. There were about a dozen, I think, in Massachusetts, according to them. Part of, I said this earlier, the lawless insurrection. How rich is it for the Trump administration to be talking about anything as a lawless insurrection? And locally, very close to home, this 18-year-old kid on the way to volleyball who's supposed to play with the school band, Milford High School, at the graduation thing on Sunday. Instead, he's behind bars.
Yeah. In the country since at least 5, if not younger.
At 877-301-8970, that's the number to call or text. And I believe, I don't know, you and I haven't discussed, I think Campbell and Healy care about this deeply, but there really is not a huge amount that they can do except ensure that police are not collaborators in this. Police can't stop ICE from doing this unless they violate laws in doing it. But it's a really tough deal when the federal government has almost all the power in this front.
But I wish, several people are texting about the fear that people with masks over their faces and no identification on their bodies and taking people into cars with tinted windows, they could be coming in to steal people for sex trafficking or anything.
Right, they may have nothing to do with the government.
Exactly.
Didn't Ozturk say she thought she was being kidnapped?
Yes.
She was being kidnapped, but kidnapped by the federal government, but she was being kidnapped. Megan in Springfield, Mass. texts and says, we need to continue to say it. This is a text. Say it loud and clear. Immigrants make America great. We need to defend them as much as possible. Also, how is deporting people improving the lives of American citizens? Capital letters at all. And I want to repeat what Marjorie said before, because it's another myth of Trump world. The numbers of crimes committed by undocumented people is not just lower, it is dramatically lower than the number of crimes committed by citizens here. And let's do the mandatory. If you've committed a serious crime in this country and you're undocumented, you of course should be deported. But I repeat, as loyal as Trump voters are to Trump, do you think if he said, and by the way, not only are we going to deport all the rapists and murderers, we're going to deport 18-year-old kids going to volleyball practice in Milford, Massachusetts.
Who came here as a baby, practically, with their parents.
We're going to deport a mother from Missouri who works at a restaurant and is beloved in her community, even by my voters. Do you think people would have been that friendly to his deportation policy? I
don't know. There's a meanness and nastiness afoot in the land these days that I'm stunned by it, actually. And people are not afraid to admit their meanness and nastiness. Listen to this one.
Sorry.
I have a friend who was followed from his kid's school and pulled over by 3 unmarked cars. He's a green card holder from Africa, married to a citizen. They asked for his ID, asked for other ID, finally let him go. He doesn't know why they followed or stopped him, but he's currently in hiding and away from his children because he's afraid.
Is that unbelievable?
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Sal in Marblehead, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi. I just have a couple of comments.
Please.
I'm ex-military, and you had a Coast Guard lady on earlier talking about having to obey orders. Mm-hmm. But the comment I wanted to make was that I think we're facing the perfect storm. I don't know if you remember that movie or not.
Of course.
But there was a confluence of 3 elements of weather that came together. And here I feel like we're looking at the confluence of the entire portion of government. The Congress, the judiciary, and the executive branch slowly closing in. When we've got people, agents in the street, which are totally masked, without uniform, without having to prove identification, unmarked vehicles, sweeping people off the street. I think that's unimaginable. And the Congress does nothing because the Congress, as part of the perfect storm, more than half of the Congress is afraid to speak up because they'll lose their nice jobs.
Yeah.
So do you understand what I'm talking about? It's a confluence, a worrying confluence in the fact that we've got unmarked people taking people off the street with masks in this country, and no one says anything. Just think of it. I mean, anybody could put on an ice jacket and a mask.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's no one to report it. There's no answering to it. It's a bad situation. I'm just worried about it, and that's really the comment I wanted to make.
Well, you made it.
I am worried about it.
You made it really powerfully, Sal.
Well,
Thanks for calling.
Mary from Framingham says we should just call them Trump's Gestapo. Although I'm not sure if the Gestapo wore a mask. I don't think that even the Gestapo did. And somebody else just said they're covering their faces for the same reason executioners wore hoods. They know what they're doing is wrong. They don't want anyone to know who they are.
Well, it's not just that. It is the fear thing. I mean, how much more scary is it to be taken by somebody, even if you knew they worked for ICE, but you don't know, as Sal just said that they do. It's to instill fear, not just in the individual they're going after, but others. I have an interesting note. You're a legal expert, aren't you a legal expert?
Ha, ha, ha.
Okay, fine. So here's the question for you. I understand that state and local governments can't interfere with ICE doing its job. You live in Brookline. Could Brookline pass a regulation that I can't say law enforcement because they're fed. Nobody can wear a mask on the street in Brookline. Applies to everybody. It's even-handed. No individual can wear a mask.
I don't know.
When the Attorney General's on in June, we should ask her. I mean, that would solve. It wouldn't solve the cruelty problem, but it would go a long way towards not solving, but at least addressing the fear problem.
You know, Dan makes a great point that the FBI is now redirected against like white collar crimes, so people can get away with stealing millions and billions of dollars, and other crimes to focus, along with the ATF and the federal marshals, on immigration.
Yeah, there's no question. Well, also a huge part of what is called the Big Beautiful Bill is billions, hundreds of billions and billions to increase this sadistic deportation campaign that he's in. And, you know, let's just end this by saying one more time. I know I speak for Marjorie. If you've committed a horrible crime, you should be deported. Period. If you're undocumented, there's no disputing that. There is no disputing that. But if you're contributing to this community and you came here because you were scared for your family, you wanted to provide for your family,
and you've done
like
everything
all of us done,
you were supposed to once you got here.
Then the answer is we should be a kinder, gentler, and saner nation.
Okay, coming up after a quick break, Michael Curry, the Mass League of Community Health Centers, the national NAACP. He's going to talk about Trump's budget proposal that cuts money drastically to hospitals, and also 5 years after George Floyd, the backlash is taking hold. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and 88.5 NEPM, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, if your hamburger is a nothing burger, Andy Husbands of Smoke Shop Barbecue fame has you covered. His new cookbook is packed with recipes to bump up your burger game. Think Szechuan chili crisp, or Asian slaw, or fried heirloom tomatoes. Plus, Uli Lorimer of Native Plant Trust is here to talk about how you can grow an ecologically functional and beautiful garden. Tune in for that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Central Square Theater, presenting Mrs. Warren's Profession by George Bernard Shaw. The mysterious Mrs. Warren built a global empire. Her daughter is shocked to learn how. Now through June 22nd. CentralSquareTheater.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marge Regan and Jim Browder. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Governor joins us from 11 to noon on June 25th at the BPL. Take our questions and yours. We're joined now on Zoom first by Michael Curry, CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers across all of Massachusetts. He's also on the national board of the NAACP, and just a week or so ago awarded the highest honor given by the Boston Chamber of Commerce. Yet another award we didn't get. Congratulations, Michael. We're really proud of you. That's really great.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Marjorie, as well.
Yeah, no, you're a distinguished Bostonian, but we're glad that you're not too distinguished to join us, Michael.
Not yet, anyway. Give it time.
I think you contributed to my being distinguished.
Okay. So, Michael, we've been hearing a lot about Medicaid cuts in the budget that's closer to reality now because it's gotten through the House and waiting in the Senate. So what will these cuts mean for Massachusetts Medicaid and the cuts to hospitals?
Yeah, so one is I just want to acknowledge last week I got a chance to stand with our governor, Senator Markey, Senator Warren, the mayor of Revere, as well as, Secretary Walsh and Mike Levine for Medicaid and state senator, just to lift up the warning about what these Medicaid cuts will do. They will be devastating. The reality is we know that people who don't have access to health insurance, what they do is they have to ignore the pain. They can't come in to get care. That they will show up in our system somewhere else where it costs more money, where the disease may have progressed too far, that a screening could have saved their life. We know that that doesn't make sense for any human being. And we know that in 1965, as Senator Markey lifted up, that was what Lyndon Johnson and others were really pushing by adopting Medicare and Medicaid, is that too many people in this country were poor marginalized, and in our case, as African Americans, we were locked out and segregated in society, and Medicaid forced institutions to open up and to integrate. So now, many years later, we're at a point where we're now going to cut billions of dollars out of the Medicaid program, and we're going to do that in certain ways. We're going to do work requirements when, Jim, most people who have Medicaid work. And if they don't work, there's a reason why they don't work, right? They're taking care of a loved one who is ill, or they're dealing with a disability. There are many reasons why people don't work, but a majority of those people are on Medicaid. But we also know, and history has shown us this across the country where there have been work requirements, that if you put work requirements in place, the administrative complexity and burden will drive people off of the coverage. Think about your own health insurance. Yeah. When you got to call your health insurance company to give them additional information, and you got to do that hurdle of filling out applications and forms. Imagine those that are marginalized, poor, dealing with disease, dealing with trauma, dealing with all those circumstances. So we know it'll just create an administrative burden and wipe many people, like my mother who grew up, who raised us off Medicaid. It will knock them off of the rolls. We know that the constant redetermination, having to fill those forms out maybe every 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is that comes out as the final policy, could be devastating for a family. We know that if they screen out immigrants and say that you have to prove your citizenship and you have to, whatever those parameters are that they'll put around, that they'll drive away millions of folks, Marjorie, across this country who we either pay now or pay greater later. I want to see them when they're sick. I want to see them to get preventive care for their teeth, their eyes, their mental health, their substance use disorder. And what I don't want to see is I don't want to see them in an emergency room where now, if you are one of those people who don't want immigrants to get care, now it's going to be 10 hours, 15 hours, or a day before you can get into an emergency room and be seen. We all pay the consequences of driving people out of health care, access to timely care. So Medicaid cuts don't make sense. It is undemocratic. It's un-Republican. It's going to hurt those rural folks who are MAGA voters, who are Republicans as well.
Well, I have to differ. Obviously, you don't know what you're talking about, because Joni Ernst is a senator from Iowa that has a lot of rural constituents, and she apparently isn't troubled at all. Here is the Republican Senator Joni Ernst at a town hall. This is unbelievable. Fielding questions about cuts to Medicaid. Here she is.
So when you are arguing about illegals that are receiving Medicaid benefits, 1.4 million, 1.4, they are not eligible. So they will be coming off. So people are not, well, we all are going to die.
Someone from the audience, if you couldn't make it out, says people are going to die. Obviously, they mean because of the Medicaid cuts. And a United States senator comes back and says, well, we're all going to die. It's not done. A day later, I guess she thought she was apologizing. She films this response to her own statement. Do you know that she did this in a cemetery? Yeah. Here's Senator Ernst the second time.
I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well. But for those that would like to see eternal and everlasting life, I encourage you to embrace my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
It's the United States Senator.
Oh, my God.
What's your, I don't even know, what's your reaction to this kind of...
You heard me say it before. My mother used to say to me sometimes, she said, you're stuck on stupid. And she's stuck on stupid because it makes no sense. It's not a matter of all going to die. Of course, we know we're all going to die at some point. But we can give people the access to coverage and care that they need so that they can live long lives. And that ultimately we need them living productive, healthy lives to serve in whatever ways they are, whether that's taking care of our crops or driving our trains or being in our science labs or being in the front of our classroom. We need those folks to be healthy. So it makes no logical sense what she says, because we should be trying to preserve lives. So, I mean, again, I don't want to trivialize it, although it deserves to be trivialized. It is stuck on stupid, not even worth paying attention to.
Michael, remind me, how many people do the community health centers serve across the state? 1 million? What's the number?
Over 1 million patients served, and even the Medicaid population of 2.1 million people on Medicaid, we serve 47.1% of our patients, our FQHC patients, are covered by Medicaid. We serve a significant population of Medicaid patients, so it will be devastating for community health.
Well, explain, that's what I wanted to ask you, both directly and indirectly. What's the impact of the likely, assuming, and I assume most people know, this budget bill that include these Medicaid cuts passed the House by one vote, 215, 214. It's unclear what will happen in the Senate because at least one very conservative Republican, Josh Hawley from Missouri, is against them, so it remains to be seen. Should they go through, what's it mean to your operation, Michael Curry?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a simplified version, right? Jim, you live in Western Mass and you're on Medicaid and you get your care at a community health center in western part of the state. Maybe you live in a rural area, so you drive a little bit of a distance to get to that community health center. The administrative complexity will mean that you'll end up falling off the rolls and you won't be covered under Medicaid. And maybe now you're uncompensated, right? That means you have no insurance. And if you walk into a health center, many people don't understand this. We have an obligation by federal mandate to provide care for you, whether you have insurance or not. That is mandated for community health centers. Not everyone has that mandate. So we have to provide care for you. And now it doesn't come at the reimbursement. So we're actually losing money on providing care to you. And then Marjorie, you're an immigrant and you're afraid to come in to get care because of all the circumstances, or you've lost your Medicaid coverage. And I didn't say undocumented, I said immigrant. And you lose your Medicaid coverage and you come in, you're coming in now without the insurance so that we can provide the care that you need. The circumstances are varied, but we know that when you kick people off of the rolls of Medicaid, you're hurting everyone in Massachusetts. It's a cost issue. It's a quality of care issue. It's an access issue. We're all interconnected in that way, which is why it'll hurt health centers. They'll lose revenue. They'll still provide that care. They'll be overwhelmed with those coming in with higher acuity of their conditions, which will overburden the system and the providers that are providing care to them.
By the way, if anybody listening to the show is trying to get up to speed on their own on these issues, in Massachusetts, as I'm sure most of you know, Mass Health is the term that is used to describe Medicaid. We're talking to Michael Curry from the League of Community Health Centers and the NAACP.
One last thing, Michael, when those people whose care is not dealt with in an early stage, they do wind up in the hospital with their advanced cancers or their advanced heart disease, and the hospitals are stuck with that cost. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because we have an uncompensated care pool, which is running a deficit, which is underfunded. So at some point, it's going to it's going to lose its funding. And we won't even have the dollars to pay for those patients that are coming in without health insurance. You know, I want to remind people just a little bit of historical perspective. Before health reform passed in Massachusetts, I had the privilege of being at Blue Cross at the time and being in the mix around the debate around health reform here in the state. We were the first state to really pass comprehensive health reform. There were arguably 400,000 to 600,000 people that didn't have insurance across the country. Before the Affordable Care Act, there was 40 million people that didn't have insurance. So Marjorie, you've heard me say this before. You have a card in your pocket that tells you you can go to the doctor right now. You might have to wait. It may take you a little bit of time to get your primary care visit or your screening or your diagnosis or whatever. But at least you have the assurance that most of that cost is not going to be borne by you. It's going to be borne by your insurance. Now, you may have a copay, a coinsurance, a deductible. The problem is, imagine if you didn't have that card in your pocket. Would you really go in to get your teeth taken care of? Would you really go in with that substance use disorder that you need to finally want to address? Would you really go in with that pain in your side that may be determined to be stage 1 cancer? Because we know 1 in 2 women in this country will have cancer in their lifetime, and 1 in 3 men. It is going to be a common diagnosis in our lifetimes. And yet you will decide not to go in and get it checked. That's unacceptable in America. That's unacceptable in Massachusetts, and it's unfortunate that we're here again.
We're talking to Michael Curry from the NAACP and the Massachusetts Community Health Centers, League of Community Health Centers. Michael, I want to switch gears and ask you, there's been a lot of talking in the last few days about this is the anniversary. 5 years ago, George Floyd was murdered by a police officer on the street who put his knee on his neck until George Floyd couldn't breathe. But there has been a backlash. We were very gung-ho right after this about police reform, about DEI, a lot about racism and racial injustice, but the backlash seems to be here. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, the backlash, I have to remind myself I should have been expecting it too.
Yeah.
As the two of you know, I talk about history. We've studied what happened after the end of slavery with Reconstruction. We know what the early part of the 20th century looked like with the backlash there. We know the backlash to the civil rights movement with Nixon's presidency. We've seen it before. But now we're here again, where all this progress and development around DEI officers at corporations, DEI programs about Black Lives Matter, and whether it's in proclamations put up on buildings or programs and services that are put in place, we should have known that America wasn't ready yet. That quite frankly, across this country, whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, too many folks weren't comfortable with this pace of progress. So now, and Donald Trump ushered in this wave, this backlash or blacklash of people who now felt comfortable saying, okay, let's get rid of that job. Let's get rid of that program. Let's stop talking about racism. Let's go back to the days that we were asleep, not woke, but sleep. We don't recognize the centuries of slavery. We don't recognize that up until the 1960s, we had segregation, a historical minute ago. Let's go back to being, let's burn the books. Let's take down the signs, let's eliminate the programs, and let's hide the words now. So yes, Marjorie, there's a backlash to that progress because America wasn't ready. And I'd ask all of your listeners to check themselves. Don't just think it's just the Donald Trump and the MAGA folks, because I'm telling you, I talk to folks across this country, and there are some people who think they're liberal who weren't comfortable either. Yeah. And that they're quietly participants in this ebbs and flows of history where they're now comfortable because they said, well, it went a little too far. We were investing in too many Black businesses. We were giving too many Black and brown folks access to college and opportunities. And, you know, maybe there's something to this Donald Trump stuff, even if I don't like his rhetoric. Shame on you, because that means you don't know American history and you don't know that it takes centuries to undo centuries of oppression and discrimination. There's a reason why that little Black boy's not in medical school or in law school. And this progress post George Floyd was our effort to try to undo that.
You know, on the DEI front, the thing I don't understand, you and we have had this conversation ad nauseum. I'm still searching for an example of where any organization or individual decided to bow down to Donald Trump who avoided retribution. And I mean, universities. Who was the first one? Columbia. Have they gotten their $400 million?
No.
Not as far as I know. Tim Cook from Apple gives $1 million to the inauguration, goes there, sits there. What does it take? 100 days for Trump to come after him for proposing? I mean, you go down the list, and a couple of days ago, MIT got rid of its inclusion office, changed the name. Is there any evidence you're aware of where attempting to assuage the anger of Donald Trump has been rewarded in any situation?
I think we know about Donald Trump is that there's no permanent friends of Donald Trump. So the reality is whatever Donald Trump's whims are, and that he will attack and do whatever he feels in his gut. And of course, his gut is not guided by history. It's not guided by equity or justice. It's guided by a man who has run his businesses for his entire lifetime that way. You can build wealth, actually, Marjorie, that way. You can be cruel, and you can refuse to rent properties to Black and brown folks, and you could milk the profit out of businesses we saw here in Stewart, and you can actually be wealthy that way. We actually know it works. But unfortunately, many Americans are complicit and put a man in the White House. I don't even say Republican, because I don't think it's a party thing at this point. And I think it's an accurate comparison to make it cultish, that people have made a deal with the devil, and they've empowered somebody who, quite frankly, Jim, to your question, he doesn't care. And tomorrow he can change his mind, and his policies and those who are complicit are hurting people. And they're hurting many people who even are supporters of his.
You know, the flip side, can I just say one thing about DEI before we leave it? I was really heartened. I always hoped this would be the case, and it makes me feel better about the American people. Axios and Harris did a poll looking at companies, their reputations with the public at 2019 and 2025. And they surveyed 16,585 adults in the United States. This is companies that kept their DEI commitments saw higher reputation scores in 2025. And in this mess that we find ourselves in, it's really heartening and makes it even harder to believe that capitulation is the route that so many firms take when you don't even get rewarded, not by the president, not by your customers, not by anybody. By the way, Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett from Boston Medical Center just texted and said, headed into seeing patients, wanted to say amen to Michael Curry. Thank you for your incredible work and clarity on the impact Medicaid cuts will have on all of us. I see it every day.
Thank you, doctor. And I'll just say this quickly, Marjorie. I'm not perfect with it, but I don't go to Target. Right, I'm making purchasing choices based on who retreated and who what is the term, anticipatory retreated, right?
Anticipatory obedience,
anticipatory obedience. I'm making some choices. I'm not perfect with it yet because I don't know who all of them are. But I'm not giving you my dollar. I want to invest in the businesses that will invest in us and know that what they're doing is in the best interest of the country. And that you understand that the little, and I say this all the time, the little black girl, little black boy, little Asian, little Latino boy or girl is just as brilliant. They deserve to be in our top schools and in our classrooms and in our companies, and that we literally have a history of derailing careers, and now we're trying to fix that. And now these companies are saying, you know what, now that we got a president gives us a convenient reason to not do it.
By the way, based on that approach of yours, do you want to meet me at Costco Saturday morning and I'll buy you a hot dog? We're talking to Michael Curry.
So one last thing, and we only have a minute left, Michael, but I want to know whether we should be concerned. I mean, you talked about people that have addiction problems. Well, now we're learning vis-a-vis the New York Times that not only was Elon Musk smoking a lot of dope, doing a lot of magic mushrooms, Adderall, that he may have been a daily user of ketamine during the time he
denies
was,
it, but
he denies
well
it.
sourced.
Yeah, that he was running around with his chainsaw talking about what he was going to cut via Doge. Should we be worried about that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to say this thing, and I'm getting provocative in my 30 seconds left when I say this. So one thing that I've realized is that if we didn't know what white supremacy was, it has now come to our awareness that if you're a white man and you did drugs, it's acceptable. If you're a white man and you're unqualified and incompetent, it's acceptable. If you're a white man who did not go through the rigor and process to become a secretary of an agency, it's acceptable. This is what white supremacy is. So you told me I had to have 2 degrees. I had to have all this great experience. I had to be, well-versed and well-spoken. And now I realize that was all a sham, that qualified wasn't the determining factor. It was something else.
Touche, Michael Curry.
Good to see you, Michael Curry. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with Michael Curry, CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, on the board of the National NAACP. Coming up, the fabulous 413 at 3 on NEPM. Monty and Khalees explore the Western Mass Racial Equity Summit and more. We say goodbye to you on NEPM. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for listening. But BPR continues here in Boston. We'll speak with Olga Cherevko of the UN with an update on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Later at the Globe, Shirley Leung and food policy analyst Corby Comer. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH 88.5 NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. Paris Alston hosts a weekly series that serves up Black intellect, culture, and joy from Greater Boston and beyond. Catch new episodes streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel and on the PBS app.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of BPR. The UN describes it as the hungriest place on earth, Gaza. We'll speak with Olga Cherevko. She's with the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs on the state of critical aid delivery to the people of Gaza amid this deadly war.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then a little closer to home, Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung joins us to talk through the latest market basket family drama. And Boston entrepreneur Daryl Settles calls in. He's aiming to raise $2 million to study the disease, the rare disease that killed his 15-year-old son, Preston. It's all ahead on the second hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The investigation continues a day after a brutal attack on a peaceful march in Boulder, Colorado. Protesters were calling for the release of Israeli hostages in Gaza. During the event, a man attacked the demonstrators with a flamethrower and Molotov cocktail, injuring 8 people. Megan Burley with Colorado Public Radio reports Jewish leaders, lawmakers, and advocacy groups are calling it a clear act of terrorism.
Colorado's Attorney General called it a hate crime. Our governor, who's Jewish, noted that it occurred hours before the start of the Jewish holiday of Shavuot. And for some of the people we talked to in the Jewish community, what we really heard was this feeling that they wanted to say they were surprised by what happened, but after the killing of Israeli embassy workers in D.C. last month and the attack on the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania, they just weren't.
Megan Burley of Colorado Public Radio reporting. Facebook and Instagram owner Meta is planning to automate its efforts to review its products for risks, including to the privacy of its users. NPR's Shannon Bond reports Meta is moving some work toward artificial intelligence rather than relying on humans.
For years, when Meta launched new features and products, human reviewers evaluated possible risks to privacy, to teen users, to the prevalence of toxic content. Now the company aims to automate up to 90% of risk assessments using a system powered by artificial intelligence, according to internal documents obtained by NPR. The change will allow product developers to release app updates and features more quickly. Meta says only, quote, low-risk decisions are being automated. But the internal documents reviewed by NPR show that Meta is considering automating reviews for sensitive areas, including AI safety and youth risk. Shannon Bond, NPR News.
Meta is a financial supporter of NPR. The United Nations says it's unacceptable that Palestinians are risking their lives for food. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says it has delivered 6 million meals in its first week in operations in southern Gaza and has denied reports of chaos and shootings near its distribution sites. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, though, says he was appalled by reports that some Palestinians were killed trying to reach one of those sites on Sunday. He's calling for an immediate and independent investigation and reminding Israel that it has, quote, clear obligations to facilitate aid into Gaza. The UN is not taking part in the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The U.S. says the UN is wrong to criticize the foundation, which it says is trying to make sure Hamas doesn't benefit from aid. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Hundreds of demonstrators took to the steps of Milford Town Hall yesterday to protest the detention of an 18-year-old Milford High School student by ICE. Esteban Bustillos has more.
The student has been identified as Marcelo Gomez da Silva. He was reportedly detained while driving to volleyball practice with teammates. A number of Milford High graduates who had just received their diplomas took part in the protest. Kelvin Aquino was wearing his red graduation gown. Aquino says the arrest shocks him.
Him, being in the situation he is, it's just not something you would expect ever. Knowing that it can happen to him, a person who we know 100% is a good person, he hasn't done anything wrong, and he definitely doesn't deserve to be treated the way he's being treated.
Governor Maura Healey said in a statement that she is demanding immediate information on the arrest.
Esteban Bustillos reporting. Cape Air plans to offer passenger service between New Bedford Regional Airport and Logan this fall. The twice-daily year-round flights are expected to begin in late September, they say. In a statement, the city of New Bedford said one advantage of the new service is that passengers will be able to pass through TSA security in New Bedford rather than in Boston, speeding up connections to other flights. They'll also not have to deal with Boston traffic going to and from Logan. The New Bedford to Boston flights are expected to take about 35 minutes. Red Sox back at friendly Fenway tonight. They host the LA Angels. We're at 65 degrees outside our studios in Brighton. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, working to help protect small businesses and the owners that run them, offering customizable coverages to salons, accounting firms, tradespeople, and more. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow as well as Wednesday and Friday. Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu. She returns June 17th. Ask the Governor with Maura Healey. She'll be with us June 25th. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. At the end of the week, the United Nations described Gaza this way, quote, the hungriest place on earth. A place where aid is barely trickling in, where the entire population is at risk of famine. Joined now on Zoom from Amman, Jordan, by Olga Cherevko. She joined us a few weeks ago. She was in Gaza City then. She hopes to return to Gaza tomorrow. She's the head of communications for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Her organization is directly involved with delivering humanitarian aid to Palestinians in occupied territories. Olga, thanks so much for joining us again. We really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for having me back.
So, Olga, when we last talked to you, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were talking about providing what had been 1 million meals, then it was down to 259,000 meals, I believe, which is way, way short of what's needed in Gaza. And we've heard these dire reports about near starvation. So what is the situation now?
Well, every time that I've said before that we think the situation cannot get worse than it is now, it's gotten worse. And unfortunately, right now, it's definitely the worst it's been since the beginning of this war. And the state of despair that people are facing and the deprivation that has been taking place for months. And of course, there was almost 80 days of absolutely nothing entering, and then a very limited volume of aid being allowed into Gaza, and that aid is negligible compared to what is actually needed by the people. I mean, they've been left effectively to starve and to be killed.
In the last few days, I think probably everybody listening to the show has read about something called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. What is it and who's behind it, Olga?
Look, we have made our position very clear on any kind of schemes that basically create a distraction for what is happening on the ground. We have voiced our concerns about this foundation in the sense that we cannot be part of any kind of scheme that is putting people at risk, that is making them come to collect supplies at these militarized zones. People shouldn't be risking their lives to come and collect any kind of supplies that they need to survive. And obviously, it is not in line with any humanitarian principles that we abide by and we work within the bounds of.
By the way, my understanding is Israeli military collaborating with an American contractor is doing this. And to just realize it's not just the position of the UN. This guy, Jake Wood, was appointed to be head of this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. He resigned, saying, quote, it was not consistent with humanitarian principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. And that's his quote. And from what I understand, not only have they not been effective in terms of getting food out to starving people, as of this morning, CNN was reporting somewhere in the neighborhood of 31 Palestinians had actually been killed in the environment right around one of these locations, correct?
I mean, this is the same reports that we have seen as well, and it's obviously a very disturbing thing that is happening. And we've spoken to some of the people who have participated in this, in coming to these hubs and collecting these supplies, and they have very honestly expressed their opinion that they do not consider it dignified or humane or in any way helpful.
You know, we countries, particularly Western European countries, and some Jewish groups, including some Jewish groups in the United States, have voiced their upset about the Israeli government's stance on getting supplies into Gaza. I mean, it's like, as you mentioned, that I can't imagine the desperation and despair these people are feeling. Is that mattering? Is there could be there some change in the policy?
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, we've certainly been appealing for this for quite some time now, and we do hope that this will bring about a change. Obviously, given the situation now, not much has changed. So we will have to see down the line how things develop. But of course, we continue to engage with everyone who can listen and who will listen to us, and to appeal to those who have influence to make sure that this takes place.
We're talking to Olga Cherevko from the United Nations Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. When we spoke to you a few weeks ago, you responded to this, but it's important, particularly in light of the criticism of this so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The argument the United States and Israel make is that through other sources of distribution of needed food and water, a ton of it is being diverted by Hamas, or at least so goes their argument. Where does the truth lie there, Olga?
Well, it's a very simple answer that we have. So if you look at the weeks of the ceasefire during which we were actually enabled to do our job, and there was a lot of aid coming in and we were distributing it to the people in need. So out of that aid, we were only coordinating and managing about 35% of that aid. So we can speak to that 35% of the aid that was entering, that we were managing and responsible for. And we can say with assurance that there was no large-scale diversion taking place, either by Hamas or by their affiliates or whoever it's claimed to be being done by. And also, I want to point out that we were not provided any kind of evidence that to support this claim that this was happening. So if we were presented any such evidence, obviously we would look into it and see what's going on. But we have the system that we have in place that has been tested over time, that has been tested over different crises in different parts of the world, has a number of mechanisms to mitigate theft, to mitigate diversion, and these include things like monitoring either pre-distribution or post-distribution or during distribution. Also, we have hotlines for people to call in any types of incidents. We're obviously responsible to our donors who pay for the aid, who provide us with the funding to provide this aid. So, of course, we are responsible to show to them where it goes. So we have confidence in saying that there's no large-scale diversion taking place by whoever is they're claiming to be doing it.
We're talking to Olga Cherevko, and she's calling us from Jordan today, but she's going to be back in Gaza tomorrow. You know, when people are desperate and starving, I can imagine there's a lot of clamor when supply trucks arrive. What is the right way to do this in a situation like the Gazans are facing? You mentioned those people having the reassurances and all that kind of stuff, but how does it work correctly?
Well, especially when there's not enough food, even in the best of circumstances, as you described to us a few weeks ago.
I mean, there's only one right way to do this, and that is by actually allowing a meaningful lifting of the blockade. And that is by opening the crossings, allowing not only humanitarian aid to be entering, but also commercial supplies, and to actually introduce a sign of normality and life here again, because this drip feeding of the population and just providing a little bit here and a little bit of this, and it doesn't address the problem on the ground. And of course, the kind of when people are trying to take flour from the trucks, I mean, what else are they going to do? They're starving. They're trying to survive, and they're trying to make sure that their family has something to live on. So that is the only reaction I would expect to be happening now, this clamor. Because the only way to actually stop that and prevent that is by allowing adequate aid and to meet people's needs.
Olga, I'm sorry, Margie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, obviously, people that are starving and not able to get medical supplies and not being able to get medical care, the Palestinians are in horrific shape. But this is going to be really difficult, too, for you and for the people that you work with, the frustration and the trauma. How do you...
The trauma's got to be traumatizing itself,
How do you cope with it?
I mean, of course. I mean, we've been, some of us have been there since it started, and even before, and so we know what it was before the war began and how it is now, and the various stages that it's gone through. So, of course, obviously, everyone is affected. I mean, if you weren't affected, you wouldn't be a human being. And the frustration, absolutely. Just the fact that we know that we have 18,000 pallets of supplies waiting at various supply points and corridors to just be loaded on the trucks, and they could very easily come if these crossings were open and these supplies could be allowed to enter. But right now we are extremely constrained in everything, in the way that they're entering, in how much is entering, in what is entering, and how we can collect it and how we can distribute it. So every point of this distribution is basically being prevented, and obstructed.
One of the stories you told us last time, several weeks ago, really stayed with both of us. You're talking about going to one of the early learning centers that you had helped establish, and saw some young kids. I think you described a 9-year-old kid who is a remarkable young artist, but what she was drawing was pictures of bombers and other military hardware. And as painful as that is to hear, when you see the images of little kids in these hospitals that are grotesquely understaffed, that don't have medicine, that don't have anesthesia, and these malnourished bodies, what is the state of affairs with medicine, with doctors, with healthcare professionals, with hospitals in Gaza, Olga?
Horrific. I mean, the healthcare system, as it is by itself, has been decimated. Obviously, there has been hundreds and hundreds of attacks on healthcare. We've documented about 700 attacks since the war began on healthcare in various forms. Just today, I believe there was another report of a dialysis unit being demolished in Jabalia in the North Gaza Governorate. And this, obviously, there's now no longer any functioning hospital remaining in North Gaza. The ones that are still partially functioning, they are struggling, of course, with supplies, especially things like trauma supplies. They are receiving mass casualties every day. They are overwhelmed, understaffed. I mean, people are terrified, obviously, to be working there because these facilities get hit all the time, and they don't know if they might be next if they keep coming to work.
You know, we've read, I know you're involved in the humanitarian side, not the political side. We've read a lot about some Western European countries putting a lot of pressure on Israel to end this killing and at minimum establish a ceasefire to allow supplies in. We know that Donald Trump has not been terribly sympathetic to that cause. Is there, to survive, and you used that word last time we spoke, it seems to me most people need hope to survive. Is there any hope amongst Palestinian people with whom you spend time that their kids will survive and prosper, that they'll survive, or is it a total state of hopelessness?
You know, I think hope is always there. Hope will always be there. I hope so. I do think that maybe some people have, in a way, given up because we see, for example, in some areas where they're so tired of being constantly displaced and constantly attacked and, from one place to another and moving to the place where you think is going to be safer and it's not safer at all. And they've actually just decided they're not going to move anymore. So either they're going to be killed wherever they are, whatever happens, happens. I do think that hopefully will never die. I mean, I receive very distressing messages from friends on a daily basis when attacks are particularly severe, and my friends saying goodbye to me in case they don't ever speak to me again, and this is very hard. So, but yeah, hope remains.
What should people do that are listening to us to try to maybe put pressure on the Israeli government, or what can people do that are hearing what you're saying right now?
Well, I think what's helpful for us is obviously, international support, international community support, and people not growing numb to what they're seeing on the screens, what they're hearing about, because the people in Gaza are not numb to this. They see it every day and they experience it every day. And, it's not, I don't think it hurts any less to lose one child or to lose 15 children, and sometimes all at the same time. So, for them, it's the same kind of pain. And of course, it just continues to increase as the days go by. So I think just don't look away and don't stop talking about Gaza.
Olga, we want to thank you and all of your colleagues who do the incredible work you do, and we hope you'll spend some time with us again in the near future. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Olga Cherevko. She's head of communications for the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Her organization is directly involved with delivering humanitarian aid to Palestinians in occupied territories. Olga, thank you again for taking the time to be with us. Coming up after a quick break, we're going to talk with Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung. We're going to talk about another family feud, apparently, at Market Basket, the mayor's race, and some more news. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
People in Asheville, North Carolina are still picking up the pieces after Hurricane Helene ripped through last year, damaging or destroying more than 100,000 homes.
There are a lot of people living in their cars. There's a lot of people about to be evicted, and we can't build enough affordable housing fast enough.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly, responding to a housing crisis with another hurricane season now underway on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Burton's Grill and Bar, serving weekend brunch with dishes like cast iron French toast, chicken and waffles, and short rib hash. A gluten-free menu is available with 8 locations in Greater Boston. burtonsgrill.com. And Boston Children's Museum, featuring 100 Acre Wood, a Winnie the Pooh experience. Visitors can sort honey and acorns with Pooh Bear and Piglet, bounce with Roo and Tigger, or read one of Owl's favorite books. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu is June 17th. Ask the Governor with Maura Healey is June 25th. We're joined now on Zoom by Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung. Shirley hosts the Say More podcast. Hey, Shirley.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi.
You guys on Friday.
That's right.
Oh, by the way, you were great. I meant to say, I had listened to a decent amount of it. You two were great. Congratulations.
It was
and
fun.
Thanks.
I was out of town, so I didn't get, but I'm sure you were fantastic.
It was really fun. Jim, but we missed you on double dipping.
I cannot tell a lie. I heard a scurrilous call about me multiple dipping, and at that point, I hung up on the show.
Really? Gosh, I'll have to hear about this in a few minutes. So, Shirley, the guy you call Good Arthur, the guy that runs Market Basket, 10 years after, or 11 years after, I guess, the last big kind of hostile takeover event, we're faced another family mess up. What's going on with Market Basket?
Another family feud.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I didn't call him Good Arthur. That's what he's known.
Yeah.
That's what everyone calls him. And so Good Arthur is has been the current CEO of Market Basket, and he got that name because he fashions himself as always siding with the employees, wants to pay them generous benefits. He wants to keep prices low for customers. And
a rare CEO in the United States of America.
Yes. And so, and what happened 10 years ago was that people said, it was a battle of good over evil, and good prevailed. RDT, the Good Arthur, prevailed in pushing out the bad Arthur, his cousin, who is Arthur S. DeMullis. And so he and his side of him are no longer part of the business. And so 10 years ago, RDT prevailed as CEO. The then board and RDS wanted to push out RDT, but yet again, now we're in this situation where now RDT, who has remained at the company with his sisters, right? And apparently there is some kind of battle between RDT's sister and RDT. RDT has been put on paid administrative leave pending an investigation. And the board is alleging that RDT is trying to stage yet another employee walkout and customer boycott, just like 10 years ago, so he can save his job.
And by the way, his sisters now switched sides. They're with him against Bad Arthur a decade ago, and they're now against him. With some of these board people. A number of people reach out to us and says this is a real life version of Succession. And then one of our coworkers pulled a little soundbite from the final episode of HBO's Succession. And what you're going to hear is the 3 siblings who are duking it out, which I think speaks to the relevance of this. Here it is.
It doesn't even make any sense. I'm the eldest boy. I am the eldest boy.
You're not.
And it mattered to him. He wanted this to go on.
Well, I mean, she's the bloodline, though.
Well, and by the way, it mattered to him, meaning the father who had
Roy Logan
passed away. You know what my dilemma is? I mean, I went to Market Basket in Somerville not once this weekend, but twice, Saturday and Sunday. I'm not clear if the pro-RDT people are urging people to boycott like we all did in 2014. Do you know?
Well, that's what's in dispute. So RDT side, managers who have been longtime supporters of him said, this is preposterous. Why would he want employees to walk out again? Why would he want to hurt the company? Why would he put any of this in jeopardy? So there's a lot of dispute on what's going on. And I was looking back, I was thinking, last time, what happened was the board and RDS, so-called Bad Arthur, had fired, had pushed RDT out, but it took about. It wasn't the kind of employee walkout in support of RDT. It took a few weeks for that to coalesce. So we might be just early days in this idea of an employee walkout. But I don't know. It's a much messier situation.
Wait. As an expert on Market Basket, I should say, I think they're two separate things. I think the board was suggesting when RDT was still in charge, before he was put on leave, that he was urging some sort of work stoppage. My question was not that. And he says no. My question is, now that they have put him on leave, is the notion that customers
should boycott is what he wants to know.
And by the way, people remember, we mentioned this to Shirley the other day, those of us who shopped at other supermarkets to show our solidarity would tape our receipts from the other supermarkets where we went to the windows at Market Basket to show that they were losing business. I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. I thought a big issue was that they want to prevent so-called Good Arthur to appoint any of his children as successors because he's 70 years old.
Succession, right.
Right. No, that is potentially one of the points of the pain points here right now. Maybe that's the family feud. I mean, we're thinking maybe the sisters, maybe they want some of their children to succeed. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a lot of his speculation, but that's what it seems like. I mean, that succession, perhaps succession is at at the heart of the family feud. The board also contends that RDT refuses to provide basic financial information and is not cooperating, and that's what happened last time too. The board was upset. I mean, it's a slightly different board now, but the board was also upset at RDT for not cooperating and not listening to the board. And so they're really at a big fight. I mean, one of the things, we talked about this on Friday too with listeners, whether or not there would be another work stoppage, whether or not customers would boycott again. I mean, it's a little early now, but it's a very different time. I mean, some people were calling and listeners were calling and said, listen, like, I can't afford, because of this high inflationary era right now, I can't afford to boycott Market Basket. I need to go to Market Basket for the low prices. It's too expensive to go to Stop and Shop.
Hey, I can respond to those callers. Those callers is, if you don't support RDT, if he ends up being gone, you're not going to have low prices anymore. This guy has doubled the size and revenue of the company since 2014. We got a call that he's not, the other day, one woman suggested he's not great. We hadn't checked it out, about promoting women to executive positions. We promised we will look into that. We forgot over the weekend. But he was fighting for pensions, for his workers, lower costs. That's how costs are going to stay down.
The workers that came in and talked about how, because of his generosity in terms of salaries, they've been able to have a one-income family.
Yeah, that's true.
Buying a house and sending their kids to college and stuff, and that is quite unusual, I would say.
Okay, so in any case, we'll stay on top of this, we really will stay on top of this. So let's go to tariffs. And the reason we want to discuss the tariff uncertainty, the business angle, where you're the expert, is it gave us an opportunity to play yet again the clip of the week last week with the taco question with this courageous reporter from CNBC. So here's a clip of Trump taking questions from reporters when he was asked to react to the acronym TACO trade, which stands for Trump Always Chickens Out. It was a term coined by Financial Times columnist Robert Armstrong, and the question was asked by a reporter from MSNBC. Pardon me, from CNBC. Here it is.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number, and I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, And they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question.
God, I love that. And that takes courage. We often criticize reporters for not being tough enough to face the President of the United States, who is out of his mind and goes after reporters and say, Trump always chickens out. You got to love this woman. That was pretty great. So the tariff thing, it seems to me that in light of we had a court on Friday, actually 2 courts, that said the tariffs are unconstitutional. It's Congress's role. And the emergency authority he's claiming he doesn't have, at least in this circumstance. And then the whole thing was put on hold by an appellate court, none of which solves the problems of the business community, which has no idea how it's going to end up, right?
Exactly. I mean, uncertainty continues to reign for the business community, and it was really whiplash, right? End of last week, it was literally on again, off again tariffs. And what's interesting about this little known, I think, trade court, right?
Yeah,
that no one's really heard of. Even I remember, I think even people at reporters at the Wall Street Journal who covered trade had never really heard of this.
I think former federal judge Nancy Gertner told us last week she'd never heard of the court. I'm pretty sure she said that. Go ahead.
Anyways, it seemed like the ruling seemed like a big setback for Trump. And I think one of the businesses that decided to file suit, in this court is in Vermont. I don't know. A colleague of mine did a story about this. Terry Precision Cycling in Burlington, Vermont. They decided to join the suit. It's because they were rolling out a new line of bike shorts for women, and with the new tariffs, it would cost like an extra almost $50 to the cost of these shorts. I think it would go to almost $200 a pair of shorts, and so they wanted to fight it. But and what was interesting is that their shorts are actually made in the USA. They sew them here, but the material is from China, so that's why they would be hit by these tariffs. And so, but I just love it that these I didn't realize that the small businesses are taking Trump to court, which is great. I think that's the only way that's going to at least slow the roll of these tariffs.
By the way,
were his advisors all saying yesterday on the Sunday morning shows that the tariffs are going to stay? They're going to keep fighting,
even if they lose this case, right?
I mean, that's what's happening now. I mean, the appellate court has upheld them, and so. But I feel I have to say, I think a lot of damage has already been done for small businesses. They've already had to re-examine their supply chains, re-examine what kind of products they'll make and they sell, and how much they cost. I mean, it's just. I think they can't wait for. A lot of them probably cannot wait for the courts.
You think about how hard this is. If you're getting a certain percentage of your supplies from China, you can't decide. Are you going to move out of China? You're going to move to Vietnam? You don't know if you're going to be back to China. I mean, I don't know how these poor people can look ahead more than a couple of weeks.
And Marjorie, this happened during Trump 1. Yeah. I mean, some of the tariffs were higher under China, and some of them did try to move out of China and move to Vietnam. Yeah. But everyone says it's really, really hard. It's really hard to do it. And I know Trump wants to move everything back to the U.S. That could take, even longer. That could take more than a decade. Decades.
No, well, it's not just decades. I think we talked with you. I'm not sure, maybe with somebody else in the early stages of this tariff thing, so-called Liberation Day, as Trump called it. And all the experts were saying to build the iPhone in the United States would not only take years, but increase the cost exponentially. And so, what's really interesting to me, I have wondered, I am one of the people who violates all the rules and check my 403B, my 401k every day, which I know you're never supposed to do, so I shouldn't have even admitted that. And I'm wondering, why is there not the kind of fluctuation you'd expect? And what I read over the weekend, which I'm sure you know, is Wall Street believes in taco too. Trump always chickens out.
That's right.
So even if the tariffs are a big thing, they know he's ultimately going to back down, whether a court tells him to or not. But let me make one last recommendation. I mentioned this to Marjorie the other day. Jake Tapper on his show, and you can check it out online afterwards, every day has a small business owner from around the country and asks them how tariffs. I told you that coffee shop in Sandwich. What's the name of that one?
Snowy Owl.
Snowy Owl.
That's great.
The woman who's the co-owner was fabulous the other day. It doesn't matter what their business is, from all over the country, and has an honest conversation with them. He had, just so people don't think it's stacked, he had a Republican from I think Colorado or something the other day, who ran for governor as a Republican. So it's not all, left-wing anti-Trump kind of people. And it's really interesting on the ground about what this policy thing is meaning, as you say, for real people, including that guy in Vermont. So we'll stay on top of that. We're talking to Shirley Leung, business columnist for the Boston Globe.
So we have a race for mayor, the two major contenders, of course, and Michelle Wu, who is running to keep her job, and Josh Kraft, who wants to get her job. They're the two main people. There's some very barbed remarks these days. She's calling him Mr. Halfsey, and Marie Antoinette, she's calling him Marie Antoinette. I mean, is this a good thing for the mayor's race, or as one of the political commentators said, she should just ignore him?
Right. I mean, it was bound to happen, right? Yeah. It's only really they're the two major candidates. And as you know, in talking to many mayors over the years, whether it's Menino or Walsh or Janey and now Wu, I mean, you're supposed to have a thick skin, but ultimately, if you're the sitting mayor, oftentimes you have a very thin skin, right? and you're not used to being challenged. Really, if you think it's only in that re-election year are you challenged, an election year, and so you start to respond to your opponent's attacks, and that's what Wu is doing. And Wu is actually, as you know, has been quite good with her one-line attacks against Josh Kraft. I mean, she's actually quite good at that, and it makes as a journalist covering the mayoral race, and for you guys, it's been great. It's been great to cover because both of them have been very, very feisty.
Yeah, speaking of journalists, I am obsessed with fundraising and finances and campaigns. And every time I think this is going to be the tipping point, it turns out voters never care about how you raise your money, where you raise it from, that sort of thing. Arguably, this might be different. Wu is spending a decent amount of time talking about how he just moved in, the Kraft just moved into the North End a year or so ago. His father bought it for him. He disagrees. We asked Kraft, he says it's not true. We asked Kraft when he was on the show about whether his father was involved in raising money for his campaign, and he was pretty straightforward about it. Here he is.
He's a dad, right? So he sees his friend, look, Dean Spanos from the San Diego Chargers, is hard money, $1,000. I'm sure he said, hey, my son's running. I mean, I do that for my kid.
By the way, subsequent to that, this guy Rubin, who's from Conshohocken, PA, the Globe is reporting, didn't give $1,000, gave $1 million to his PAC. And as Kraft said over the weekend, I have nothing to do with my PAC. It's an independent thing. Of course, he could say, I'm asking them not to run negative ads. Here's Wu, though. When we had her on the other day, we mentioned that he says, everything you're saying about me is untrue in terms of who bought the house, who bought my condo. Let's play this. Play it. Here's a little bit of what Mayor Wu had to say.
On the house ownership, right? Again, public record is there when it comes to the Register of Deeds for Suffolk County. You can go and look at the deed. It was an all-cash transaction, no mortgage, from an LLC who's registered to Patriot Place in Foxborough. If there's more information there, I think the public deserves to know it. I filed my financial disclosures, as I have to every year. We own our home in Roslindale. Our names are on that deed, not an LLC, as every other mayor of the city of Boston has had their name on their personal residence and not an LLC.
And she went out of her way to say, by the way, despite what he's saying, which I hadn't even heard, I am not from a wealthy family in Chicago.
Well, she talked about their income last year, according to records, was $184,000. So
she and her husband.
She and her husband, right? And that's mostly her
salary.
Yeah.
Mostly her salary.
He's stay-at-home dad now to take care of the kids. But the thing about Kraft claiming he bought this $2 million condo with his own money, do you make that much money running the Boys and Girls Club? I don't know.
You do. According to my colleagues, I mean, he made close to $350,000 a year as the CEO of Boys and Girls Club. And
I don't think that's going to get you to $2 million. I don't know.
Well, pay it in cash. By the way, he hasn't released his taxes yet. He said his person said in the Globe the other day they're going to release it. We'll learn a lot more about his finances
because it was
soon.
In cash, correct? So
that's what she said.
It is, but I assume that he's the son of a multi-billionaire. He probably has some kind of trust fund.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's what I figured. It's associated with his father. It's not his salary that he earned.
No, but it may be his money. I mean, let's see
it's
what
his money, right? It's his money, and I mean, the thing is that if you're running for mayor and you want to win, and you happen to be from a very wealthy family, I think any of us in the same position would tap your family funds or would tap your own money. I mean,
before you get to your podcast, we say it's his money. We don't know. I mean, in all fairness, while I agree with you, it's very possible he's got a ton of money because he's the son of even if his father, quote, didn't buy the condo for him, we don't know that it's his own money. He's got to do his disclosure about that. He says it's his own money, and let's see it.
It'd be much better for him to just say, hey, he joked. He wasn't born on third base. He was born on home plate. And he's the son of a wealthy guy.
You think people care?
I think it's not good to pretend that you're earning this on your own like she is when you're getting this money either from a trust fund or because of your father's
Well, you don't know
success.
that yet. You don't know that yet. Again, as Shirley said, he made $350,000 a year running the Boys and Girls Club.
He's got $350,000 in Boston with children is not going to get you to $2 million cash on a house. I just don't think it is.
Well, right, but the thing is, like, I think no one's disputing he's a wealthy guy.
Yeah.
Nor is he, obviously.
Yeah, he's not either, and I mean, I think there are other, I mean, Mayor Wu is probably correct in saying that, other mayors have had their homes in their own names. It is unusual not to have it, a trust. But I've seen an LLC as the name of the owner of your home. But other people do it. It's not illegal.
It is not. No.
People of means also do that, similar structure. But he probably should have thought, oh, if I'm running for mayor, maybe I should have the home in my own name, right?
By the way, an LLC, for those who don't know, is a limited liability company.
Just own it. He's a lucky guy, wealthy family. Own it. Not try to pretend.
But in fairness, he has. I mean, the line you used that he uses all the time. I wasn't born on third base. I was born on home plate. In any case,
and that's fine. So I wanted to mention your podcast, Say More, which has been spectacular on cancer. There's a few I wanted to talk to people about and you about. You have this one segment where it's a family where almost everybody has come down with cancer or died of cancer because they have this gene.
Yes, Lee Framini gene. And this is Larry Ingrassia is a journalist I used to work with at the Wall Street Journal, and he was also at the New York Times and the LA Times. And I knew his brother too, Paul Ingrassia, and I knew Paul always had cancer. He was always battling cancer, and he died when he was 69, a few years ago. And it turns out when he had his last cancer, Paul had his last cancer, the doctor had him tested. And it turns out he carried this hereditary cancer gene called Lee Framini. And they believe the mother passed it on to 3 of her 4 children.
Yeah.
So Larry is one of 4 kids, and he was the only one that did not have this gene. All 3 of his siblings died of cancer. His 2 sisters, one died in her 20s, another died in her 30s, and then Paul died when he was 69, multiple cancers. And then Paul passed it on to his son, Charlie, who died of cancer, I think at 39 or something like that. But Larry wrote this whole book about this gene, and that went through his family. So it's only he and his dad did not die of cancer.
Yeah, it was incredible. I'd never heard of it before.
Yes. So interesting, really interesting. You guys know Irene Lee?
Yes, of course.
I only learned this last week. So the Lee in Lee Framini is her dad.
Oh
Her
my
dad
God!
was a doctor at Dana-Farber, and he discovered.
I didn't know that. Wow.
So what was interesting, right? This all came up. Larry didn't know I knew Irene. Irene didn't know I knew Larry. We all found out on LinkedIn when Larry wrote a book, a memoir, called A Fatal Inheritance, and it just came out in paper book last week. So he was saying, big week for me. I was on Shirley's podcast, and my book is out paperback, and Irene's like, oh, I love Shirley, I love Larry. It's like,
Irene has made dumplings for those who don't know.
That was a great segment, and the other great segment that I think people would want to know about is the cancer rate that you talked about among very young people. I think one of the women you spoke with was 28.
Yeah.
Yes, 28. So that's so while we have made so many advances in terms of treating cancer, and people are living longer, and they're being successfully treated, but there's one kind of cloud about one. I mean, certainly there are people who who die of cancer, but a lot more people are being successfully treated.
Right.
But there's a really kind of unsettling rise of cancer in young people in their 20s and 30s, especially colorectal cancer. And I spoke to a woman who was 28, Kelly Spill, and when she was first diagnosed, but it took her about 8 to 9 months to get diagnosed, because people don't think of, if you have blood in your stool, you have colorectal cancer. You're 28. Why would that happen? That doesn't even make sense. And so it took her multiple doctors and multiple tests before finally some doctor gave her a colonoscopy at 28, and it was discovered she had stage 3 colorectal cancer. I mean, usually you do not have your first colonoscopy until you're 45.
By the way, you should say in this final episode, for those who don't know, we should have mentioned this. The inspiration for this was your willingness to talk about your own breast cancer.
My own breast
but
cancer.
the thing that was most troubling about that final episode that Marjorie was just asking you about of your podcast is that most of the experts, including the researcher with whom you spoke, don't know what's going on, what the causation is. They're suggesting that it's likely to be environmental, but they haven't nailed it down yet, right?
They haven't figured out why. If it's is it's microplastics? Is it the kind of diet we have now? But something is happening where a lot of 20s and 30-year-olds are getting cancer, and I think they're late stage because they're not testing for it. They don't know. They think it's something else, and so it's really frightening. So,
and this is in the tragic context of so many of these cancer studies being shut down.
It's a wonderful point.
By Donald Trump and the federal government. So the progress may be stalled in many cases, which is tragic.
Shirley, the whole podcast was spectacular and really important.
Thank you. We just wrapped it up.
It was great.
The
whole thing was great. Every single one of them was great. And if people haven't listened to Say More, they should listen to it because it's a great podcast in general. And this gives you so much information about cancer. Thank you, Shirley.
Good to see you, Shirley. Take care.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, thanks, Marjorie.
We've been speaking to Shirley Leung, Boston Globe business columnist, host of the Say More podcast. Thanks again to Shirley. Coming up after a quick break, Boston real estate developer Daryl Settles calls in as he plans a memorial fundraiser about the disease, raising awareness of the disease that took his son, Preston, who was 15 years old, when cardiac arrest during a basketball game led to his death. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Thanks, Shirley.
Trusted, local news.
Boston city officials are offering their annual summer safety guidance.
GBH News.
Officials are warning drivers to expect significant, potentially hours-long delays.
Here for what matters to you.
Governor Maura Healey says health care cuts approved by the U.S. House would have a devastating impact on the Commonwealth if they pass the Senate and are signed into law.
GBH 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the International Institute of New England, celebrating 100 years of supporting Boston's immigrants through resettlement, education, employment support, and pathways to citizenship. IINE.org. And Harrow International School, New York, offering day and boarding education for grades 6 through 12 on a 170-acre waterfront campus on Long Island, opening this fall. More information is available at harrownewyork.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now on the phone by Daryl Settles, president of Catalyst Ventures Development, also obviously of the legendary Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen, builder of Color Coalition, on and on. He's the father of Preston Settles, who was just 15 years old in February of 2022 when he suffered cardiac arrest on a basketball court and ultimately died. Daryl's organizing the Preston Settles Memorial Fund in his son's honor. They're hosting a fundraiser on Wednesday, June 11th, the Cyclorama. More information can be found at PS3, the number 3, PS3CasinoNight.org. Daryl, really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. How are you, Marjorie?
We're good.
We're good. We're well, and we appreciate your time in telling us about this situation, Daryl. But before you tell us about the heart attack and what happened, tell us about Preston. What was he like?
Preston was an extremely happy-go-lucky guy. He was the ultimate male, played every sport. Wasn't your typical teenager who would like to stay in bed to 10 or 11 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. He was up bright and early, always wanted something to do, was the type A personality. So he was the center of the room and just a great kid. And one of the things I always like to say was that, his slogan is never have a bad day. He could have the meanest argument with someone, and 10 minutes later, he will have forgotten the argument.
Wow. So that's very mature for someone at 15 years old, that's for sure.
That is correct.
I remember reading at the time about this cardiac arrest thing, and I was under, I think, the mistaken impression that this is incredibly rare among teens, but it's not as rare as I thought. Is it, Daryl?
It is. Well, it affects 1 in 500. And, sudden cardiac arrest, or I should say hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, it generally occurs during your youth to mid-adult years.
So what are you trying to do with this fundraising effort? You've been raising money all along.
That is correct.
You're a pretty good fundraiser in the real world for things that really matter. This is obviously another one. What's the goal in general, and what's the goal on June 11th?
So to date, we've raised over $1 million. And so for this particular event, we want to raise over $1 million. So that would give us a total raise of over $2 million. And, we're doing, multiple things with it. So we're providing money to Tufts Medical Center, Boston Children's Hospital, the two hospitals that he was in for 22 days between the two. We're donating money to the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, the YWCA. And the biggest thing is that we teamed up with a company called Zoe Medical Corporation, which, believe it or not, is the largest manufacturer of AEDs in the world. And they're based in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. Wow. So 6 months after Preston's transition, we got a phone call from a neighbor, who my kids, both played ice hockey with. And she said, I wanted to reach out with you guys, but I want to give you some time. And she informed us that she was the corporate counsel for this particular company and that she would like to introduce us to the president of the company. So we did that just this past fall and ended up, scheduled for a 1-hour meeting that lasted 3 hours and really, enjoyed meeting the team over at Zoll. And they're our lead sponsor for this event. So they gave us a significant discount and a fairly significant number of free ADs to give out to any organizations in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that needs it.
ADs?
And particularly youth organizations.
ADs, you explain.
AEDs.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Oh, these are the portable hand defibrillators.
Okay.
Most people know what that is.
Okay.
And thank you for asking for that, Margie. You just assume, well, I've been talking about it for so long now, I forget that most people, including myself in the very beginning, did not know exactly what an AED was.
Yeah. Automated external defibrillator is what it's
That is correct.
Daryl,
portable.
You just mentioned that 1 in 500 young people might be afflicted with this hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, but it's also the leading cause of death in young athletes. So is there any way to know, to test, to find out?
There is a test that you can do, but it is very, very rarely done.
Yeah.
And it's just like my son was a very healthy young man and was almost my size. And it just you never thought that something would happen to him. It's just like Damar Hamlin. It's just like LeBron James's son. It's just like healthy people you don't expect. And even when my son collapsed, the last thing that came to our mind was that he had a heart attack.
Yeah.
It was, we just thought that he was out of breath needed some air, and then he went into a seizure, and the rest just folded out in a negative way. But it just was never ever on the top of our list that our son could be having a heart attack. And one of the things that we want to do and educate people with the American Heart Association, with Zoe Medical and others, is that these AEDs are so easy to use. They actually walk you through the process.
Yeah.
All you have to do is turn the button on. And if I wasn't at a golf course right now, I would actually show you what one looks like. But they're very easy to use, and that's one of the things they're going to do at the event. Zoe Medical will have a booth there, and they're going to be training people how to use it, allowing people to use it.
Well, Daryl's quoted in the Boston Business Journal saying it's the first and last fundraiser. So support it big time. June 11th, Cyclorama. It's at PS3, the number 3, casinonight.org. Daryl, we really appreciate what you're doing, and it's good to see you. Good luck.
Great. Thank you, guys. Looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you very much. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, food policy analyst Corby Comer. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
If you made a gift to GBH this year, thank you. Your support keeps this great reporting coming all summer long. So, if you can, please consider making an additional gift by the end of the month, online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Trinity Rep, presenting Blues for an Alabama Sky, a moving drama set during the abundant creativity of the Harlem Renaissance. On stage May 29th through June 29th. Tickets at trinityrep.com. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of BPR. It's Tufts food policy analyst Corby Comer on what federal health cuts have meant for food safety, like that E. coli outbreak you probably never heard about. The good news, it's smooth sipping for the Trump winery in Charlottesville.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then, inspired by the Washington Post, we'll end with you on all things office lunch and office kitchen etiquette. How many weeks do you wait before putting down your pride and washing your colleagues' dishes? Or would you rather die? Is there ever an all-right occasion to zap last night's haddock in the microwave, Jim? And will Jim ever hear of the last of his infamous gazpacho incident of 22? Call or text, weigh in, third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The Senate is taking up a massive tax cut and spending package that narrowly passed the House last month. NPR's Tamara Keith reports the legislation has divided congressional Republicans and is facing significant revisions in the upper chamber.
The big questions are how hard it will be for Senate Republicans to pass this and how many changes they'll make to the House version. There's a lot of pressure on Senate Republicans because this basically contains Trump's entire domestic agenda all in one bill. Tax cuts, immigration spending, cuts to Medicaid and other programs.
That's NPR's Tamara Keith reporting. Delegations from Russia and Ukraine have wrapped up their latest round of peace talks in Istanbul, but the meeting, lasting just over 2 hours, ended without significant progress toward ending the war. NPR's Rebecca Rossman reports the two sides did agree to another prisoner exchange.
Russian and Ukrainian delegates say both sides have agreed to exchange all seriously wounded or ill prisoners of war, as well as captured fighters under the age of 25. They also agreed to exchange the remains of 6,000 soldiers. Russia offered a 2 to 3 day ceasefire, well short of the 30-day proposal Ukraine made last month. Expectations were low for this second round of talks, which wrapped up after less than 2 hours. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said he hoped to bring together Zelensky, Putin, and possibly President Trump for a third round of talks later this month. Rebecca Rossman, NPR News, Istanbul.
Groundwater reserves in the western U.S. are rapidly drying up. Alex Hager from member station KUNC reports scientists use NASA satellites to gather data for a new study.
The numbers they found are grim. Over the past 2 decades, the Colorado River Basin lost nearly 28 million acre-feet of groundwater. That's roughly the amount stored in Lake Mead, the nation's largest reservoir. Kathleen Ferris is a groundwater expert at Arizona State University. She wasn't involved in the study, but says groundwater pumping needs better regulation.
We need to do far more than we're doing. And I am very pessimistic that the political will to make something happen is not there.
Ferris said stricter rules are needed soon because of the shrinking Colorado River. More cities, businesses, and farms are pumping groundwater as the amount on the surface gets smaller. For NPR News, I'm Alex Hager in Fort Collins, Colorado.
President Trump's decision to double tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to 50% is ramping up trade tensions with China. Beijing has criticized the decision, accusing the U.S. of violating a recent trade agreement. The move has also rattled global markets. On Wall Street, the Dow was down to 160 points. This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman is in Boston today, and the Democrat says he's been warmly received during his visit to Massachusetts. That's despite criticism that he's faced for his support of Israel and his moderate stance toward President Trump, and as he faces scrutiny for an alleged lack of attention to his job in Congress. Philadelphia Inquirer recently published an editorial calling on Fetterman to take his job more seriously or else step aside. Fetterman dismissed the piece as a smear as he appeared at Boston's Kennedy Institute for the U.S. Senate for an event with Fox Nation's The Senate Project.
I've spent two days in Cambridge, one of the most very liberal and progressive areas, and it's been all uniform positive reaction just walking around, too.
Fetterman has also faced questions about his mental and physical health following a stroke he suffered in 2022. He says he remains up for the job. And if you're a fan of the Seth MacFarlane adult animated show Family Guy, you'll be happy to know that you'll soon be able to drink like the lead character Peter Griffin. Beginning July 18, the restaurant West End Johnny's in Boston will transform into the Drunken Clam. Complete with its neon sign and iconic booth, it'll offer signature cocktails and Eat My Junk Food menu, Family Guy-themed trivia, and karaoke. The bar is happening thanks to Bucket Listers, a travel media company where people can find and book events. The company has already hosted Drunken Clam events in Los Angeles and in Houston. 67 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. The mayor, Michelle Wu, will join us June 17th at the library, and the governor, Maura Healey, will join us June 25th. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now on Zoom by food policy analyst, multiple James Beard winner, Corby Kummer. Corby is the executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, senior editor at The Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hello, Corby Kummer.
Hello, Jim. Hello, Marjorie.
Hello, Corby. So, Corby, we talked earlier with Shirley Leung, of course, business columnist at The Globe, about what's going on at Market Basket. It seems to be another family feud with the so-called good Arthur, for some reason, at the center of this mess, even though he's the guy that seemed to have saved it last time around. But in any case, I'm wondering, is it unusual? Market Basket is not only famed for its low prices and its great quality, but also for the good pay, good benefits, the way workers have been treated there by Arthur T. I'm wondering, I think that's unusual in corporate America, but I could be wrong.
Of course it's unusual. I mean, it's unusual among supermarkets. I remember when a favorite checkout guy from the Brookline down the street from you, Marjorie, the Brookline Bread and Circus / Whole Foods, turned up at Wegmans when Wegmans opened on Route 9, and he said it was entirely a question of how workers were treated and that it had really changed since Amazon took on Whole Foods, and that's why he was attracted to Wegmans, which is still family-owned like Market Basket.
Yeah.
I had not realized till I read the recent Globe piece that Market Basket operates a total of 90 stores.
I didn't either.
And that Arthur T. had built it into an $8 billion annual revenue generator, doubling it since the 2014 buyout, which we talked about a lot. So I think it's very rare that employees defend the owners, as they did during that 2014 fracas. And now the board is trying to get Arthur T., who's done this building up, out.
Yeah.
Well, I'm defending Arthur T. in my own small way. I just need to be told what to do by those in charge. So I am standing here. Operators are standing by.
Hey, Jim's a Market Basket. He's a Market Basket man through and through.
I am a Market Basket man.
There every Saturday morning.
So and Sunday this weekend too.
And
both
Sunday,
days.
okay.
So I want to talk to you about the impact some Trump policies are having on our food and that sort of thing. And let me ask you like an existential question. Is it better to know that there's an E. coli outbreak, or are we better not to know? That's my basic question, Corby. What do you think?
We're better knowing that it's happening and knowing the origin. And the Trump administration recently didn't publicize an E. coli horrible incident from romaine lettuce that nearly killed a 9-year-old boy who's still having PTSD and spent 3 weeks in the hospital because they said, well, the company withdrew all of its products, so what's the point of alarming the public? Well, there's every point in alarming the public. It makes you think about romaine lettuce, and it makes you think the government's on the ball because they're tracing it and they're publicizing it.
You know, the reason this story to me is so important, we want to talk to you about it, is because I fear that one of the reasons there's not been enough of revulsion, for lack of a better expression, to Trump's policies, at least in my estimation, is because a decent number haven't yet or don't touch the non-revulsed person. This is something that has potential harm in waiting for every single individual. It's the most basic function of government to keep our food safe and let us know when it's unsafe. And they're stepping away from it. It's huge. I'm not exaggerating this, am I?
No, it's very huge. 48 million people have food-borne illness every year in the U.S. And let's see, 128,000 are hospitalized, 3,000 die, according to the CDC, which is being blocked for releasing a lot of new data, and they've fired a lot of their research scientists. The new head of the FDA, Makary, is saying that there was incredible bloat in the staff of FDA, and they're not going to reduce any inspection, and that they hadn't fired any scientists. But a former woman who headed a lot of the food safety at FDA said, you know, he's dreaming if he's saying they haven't fired a lot of senior scientists. Of course they have. Susan Maine, she was much revered food safety person at the FDA. And of course they've laid off scientists. And what's more, they've said that they're not going to reduce inspections. Even under Biden, since 2018, the FDA has fallen short on its annual inspection number every year. And it's only going to get worse as the FDA has fired thousands of workers.
So speaking of cutbacks that may have serious impacts on a lot of things, including fishing and the ocean, the cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA, what is this going to mean?
So this was an endless story in Civil Eats, and I kept thinking, can it get any longer? How do I get through this?
It was long.
I'm so glad you said that. I was too embarrassed to say it, but that's what I was thinking.
It kept getting worse. The more you read about the NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration cuts, it started out with Point Judith, Rhode Island, and the fact that without accurate forecasts of the fishing population over the summer, fishermen and women are not given permits because it's the NOAA that's going to set the fishery limits based on its projections for the year. So far down in the story, there's a very good quote from a woman, I can't remember who, said, "Things that just used to work, now it's chaos." So all the scientific administration is in complete chaos and havoc. What's it doing? It's having a huge effect on commercial fisheries, which are very important in New England, in Maine and Rhode Island. They don't know, meaning the fishermen, the fishery industry, what, especially bluefish, for example. Bluefish has been greatly reduced in population as many of these fish move north because of warming, global warming, and they go in search of cooling waters. Lobster too. So there's lobster exporters even in Rhode Island. They don't know what the summer is going to bring, whether they're allowed, whether they're going to be able to even make any money or turn a loss, because the fishery projections are being held up or not happening. And there's a whole branch of NOAA, I've got to find if it's NFSC or what the research acronym of it, but the entire Bureau of Scientific Research has been abolished. And so the Trump administration is trying to privatize this science and privatize the fishery projections, which are they're going to suppress everything that has to do with energy drilling, which really disrupts fisheries, because the Trump administration is saying, we're prioritizing energy. We just want to unlock America's energy. What does that mean? It means a lot of fishery populations are going to be killed.
Okay.
Can we stay in the water for a minute? I cannot tell a lie. I didn't know what a sea squirt
Neither did
was
I.
until this morning. But apparently, according also to Civil Eats, and another piece that is sort of Bible length, they say that warming waters, obviously another thing that Donald Trump doesn't care about, is causing an invasion of sea squirts at Maine fisheries. So let's start at the beginning. What is a sea squirt?
What is a sea squirt?
And
It's
why
a tunicate, of course.
It is a what?
These are words that none of us ever knew. But what is it? It's like a slug. It's a filter feeder that feeds on plankton. It's able to suck in lots and lots of ocean water and find the little micronutrients in it to survive. What are also micronutrients? What are also filter feeders? Mussels, clams, oysters. All the things that we really want to have access to that food. So these sea squirts become like slugs. They become gorged and they're full of water and they attach themselves because they exude this mucus-like substance that enables them to adhere to oyster fishery crates and nets. And so it starts off with a woman who owns one of the 140 oyster farms, many of them state-supported in Maine, saying this is supposed to be a 5-pound oyster crate. It can swell, gorge up to 100 because of the stored liquid in these gross sea squirts.
From what to 100? What was the pound at the beginning?
5 pounds to 100.
Yeah, they show pictures. They show pictures of this cage that it looks like you could catch a lobster or something else in there, and it's almost obliterated. Yeah,
He's holding it up
it's
if you're
holding it up.
watching the streaming.
It's almost covered by these things, right? Yeah, you can't even see them.
And of course, it's climate warming that's increasing it. Also, it turns out the Gulf of Maine doesn't have a particularly diverse fishery population. And so there aren't many competitive species to block out this invasive global warming moved north population of sea squirts. And they're robbing food of all of these oysters and mussels and clams that are being farmed, and are also making it too heavy to operate this equipment. And here's another gross fact about these science fiction features. Even if you cut them off and you scrape them off of your oyster crate, they regrow. So it's very nightmarish. The only way to drive a stake through their hearts is to leave them in the sun so that they dry out. Apparently drying out kills them, but of course you've lost the population of oysters and mussels you've been farming.
Tell you, climate change doesn't exist, though. The people have climate change.
It's a hoax.
It's a hoax. So we shouldn't really worry about it.
So let's, there's too much bad news coming out of the Trump administration. There's some really good news if you read the New York Times on May 27th, where a reporter there went and tested Trump wine. And while he did say that it was inconsistent, let me read you one of the reviews. A 2018 Blanc de Blanc sparkling wine, a mere $39.99, made entirely of Chardonnay, was dry, creamy, and well balanced. And he goes on to say that, well, some of them, one of them is cloying. For the most part, he said they were inconsistent but good. And then I just couldn't remember who wrote it. I said to Marjorie, a bunch of years ago, we were talking to some food writer, whoever the hell it was, who had been drinking some Trump wines and was not quite as enamored of them as this guy was. You are in the industry. Did you ever read, do you know what article I'm talking about or not?
This is exactly like talking to my parents when I say, I wrote that. They say, we read articles, not bylaws.
Yeah.
So Corby wrote this piece. We talked to him about it at the time in Vanity Fair. My favorite part of the piece.
Is the headline? Is the headline?
We'll read the headline, then I'll tell you.
Welch's grape jelly with alcohol is what the headline says.
Well, it gets worse. That's the headline on Corby's piece. He'll tell us about the piece in a second. But the graphic that goes along with it from Vanity Fair is Donald Trump from behind peeing in wine bottles. Again, that's Vanity Fair. It's not us. So what was your review of the Charlottesville winery that allegedly is the largest in the country, according to Donald Trump at the time, Corby?
Well, no, I mean, it's the largest. It was one of the largest on the East Coast. As always, he lies about everything. But sorry, I didn't say that.
It's okay.
But it was full of misstatements.
Thank you.
It was not a completely negative review, but Eric Asimov, the wine writer for the Times, felt he had to be much more balanced. The fact is that Kluge, a society couple who busted up, and the wife who inherited who got the winery in the divorce, put like hundreds of millions of dollars into making it a first-class winery on the East Coast, and Trump got it at a fire sale price, and through blind bids, through successively waiting out this woman who became increasingly in bad financial straits and had to sell it at a fire sale price. But what he bought was something that had been created by very good winemakers she had hired from Europe, excellent equipment, and a fairly tasteful winery tasting room. And so Eric Asimov is kind of surprised by all this, decent taste of both wine and both the environs of, she made it into a showplace in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is horse country. So, a lot of that work still survives. What was very interesting to me was Eric Trump owns it, and the website tries to distance itself from the president. I don't know why, so it's not conflict of interest. But in any case, Eric...
Oh, yeah, he's really concerned about that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Conflict of interest is a big thing in the current administration.
Yes, go ahead.
So Eric Asimov had to give some of these wines their due. And I interviewed the winemakers who had been imported from Europe. And Eric Trump had not fired them because he was managing it also in Trump 1. And so, there's still expert people who are running this. And I think that what Asimov's review would come out saying is that it's probably better than most wineries around it. And I would add that's because of the tens of millions that Trump didn't have to pay for that were put into infrastructure and expertise to build this winery.
So wait. Are you saying that when Asimov did the piece last week in the Times, or when you did your piece 8 years ago, that they went out of their way to distance themselves from Trump? Who said that? You were then or now?
No, it's now.
Well, wait.
Because all of the people staffing the winery just rolled their eyes at the MAGA people who thronged the parking lots.
But the first line, they're obviously trying to connect it to Donald Trump for sales purposes. The first line on the website at trumpwinery.com is, enter the golden age with Presidential Reserve inaugural edition. I mean, they're almost making like he stepped on the damn grapes. It's another grift.
And we all know that Trump has never drunk an alcoholic beverage in his life. So it was just branding and his buying the fruits of somebody else's economic distress.
Okay, so Corby, we got to talk to you about the most important topic because we're going to talk to our listeners about it.
Yes.
And Marjorie and I have a slight disagreement on this issue. There's a piece in the Washington Post, Office Lunch Etiquette, and they talk about these definitive rules for office lunches. You are the kind of person who I assume has very strong feelings about this. So what are some, forget what the Washington Post says, what are some of your definitive rules about office lunch etiquette, Corby Kummer?
Office smells in the microwave and cleaning up after yourself. Those
there you go.
Come up in the piece, but they aren't, I think, sufficiently stressed.
Yes, I think, well, office smells. And the thing that they really pay a lot of attention to is the smell of fish.
Can I ask you about that? Let me ask you about this before the listeners weigh in.
In the microwave.
What I have done,
wafting 20 feet in all directions,
okay.
like in ever larger circles.
You made your point there.
Okay.
Now, let me just be clear. The times I will admit that more than one occasion I have microwaved salmon.
Yeah,
and it's,
that's right.
The microwave is about a foot from the studio. Can I explain this to Corby?
I just want to say, it doesn't matter if you microwave it at 7:30 in the morning. You can still smell it when I arrive at 9.
Well, you preempted my. I do. If I do it long before Marjorie gets here.
Doesn't matter.
It totally dissipates.
It does not dissipate.
By the time she gets here.
It's wafting.
So do you think it continues to waft 90 minutes later, or it dissipates like I'm assuring people that it does, Corby Kummer?
I think you're wrong and Marjorie's right. I think it continues to waft. But I have a pro tip that is not in the Washington Post article and you and everyone else should know.
What is it?
Keep some sort of spray cleaner beside the microwave and paper towels. And when you're done, spray the roof of the microwave, the inside of the door, and the walls and the floor, because that's where the smell really resides. It adheres to the ceiling and walls and glass door of the microwave.
There you go.
Really is going to help dissipate the smell.
By the way, in all fairness on that front, I want to be serious for a second. This microwave, in furtherance of what Corby just said, was actually clean in 2021. So we every half decade.
There are now little pieces of salmon.
No, actually, what's it? You know what are in there?
To the walls.
Sea squirts.
Sea squirts.
Dry them out.
Okay,
Yeah.
so before you go, we're gonna talk to you all about. So get ready for this. Office lunch etiquette. What are your rules of the road? If you have violators, maybe you're a violator at your office. What do you want to say to them? Can we go back to one serious thing for a second? There's a story on our sister station, CAI, the heading of which is Tariff Uncertainty, Canadian Boycott, Have Cape Cod Businesses Wary as Summer Begins. I have heard and read and seen a lot of stories where not tariff impact in and of itself, but anger about tariffs and how the United States is treating its best neighbor is causing a lot of Canadians to not make trips that they would otherwise make. There was a great piece on CNN about this guy that takes people on bicycle trips to the Grand Canyon or some such kind of thing. And Cape Cod, I know from having worked there many years ago myself for several summers, is hugely dependent on Canadian visitors, particularly on off-season kinds of times. What's the expectation as to how much damage this is going to do to some of these independent businesses, Corby Kummer?
You know, it's going to do a lot, and the influx of Canadian tourists is just when Cape Cod businesses need it, which is after the school year starts in September and October. Very beautiful times, of course, to visit the Cape. But we'll see in November, in middle of November, how far businesses drop. But, you know, what's really important is to see, does the administration care? Do any, lawmakers, does anyone worry about this actual business that alienating Canadians? And as you know, it goes so far beyond this. It's Chinese students not applying. It's foreign students not applying. It's foreign visitors not applying, not only because they disapprove of the administration, but because they worry about getting in and out of the country.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they also depend a lot on foreign workers to come in in the summertime too. I mean, I know entire, Y camps over the years have been, the kids come from Great Britain, they come from Australia, they come there from the summer to work there, and you wonder what's going to happen to all those.
There's a place in Wellfleet which has fabulous seafood. It's called Moby Dick's.
Yeah.
And what each of the wonderful young people, and I do mean they're wonderful young people, do, I'd say about 90% of the staff in the summer are from other countries, and their badges not only have their names, but it's pretty great. It has their name and the country from which they're coming, which is pretty wonderful, actually. So, I mean, that's actually, and that's at risk. So, I mean, the implications for independent small businesses is huge. What are you emotionally about, Margaret?
Well, apparently we have obtained special sound of the New York Times reporter stomping
this is going to be a
grapes
disaster.
at Trump's
Whenever our
vineyard.
staff writes something like this to us, you know that it is going to be just pitiful. You want to do it anyway?
Well, it's the viral grape lady falling video.
Oh, that is one of the best ever. If you haven't seen this.
Okay, you ready?
One of the greatest ever. Two women, if this is what I think it is, are stomping on grapes until one of them slips and it's not funny. She has a horrible fall. Margie's laughing her you-know-what off. I don't know if this will translate in sound, but maybe it will.
Okay.
Here it is. That is like...
I can't breathe.
Who got joy out of that?
Apparently our
By the way,
staff.
that's real.
Our staff likes it.
You ever seen that? You're not that type, Corby. Did you ever see that video? What'd you say?
I don't take pleasure in other people's misfortune.
There you go.
You do. That's
there
different.
you go.
Well, you know what? Thank you. I'm sure what you have seen, though, before we let you go, have you ever seen Lucille Ball attempting to do this like 70 years ago on I Love Lucy?
Yes, it was great.
Of course.
With
I think
Ethel?
we just have to redo that with a MAGA hat.
Yeah, Lucy.
Okay.
Was it Ethel that was with her?
I think it was Ethel,
They
yeah.
were both, or was that the chocolate pieces they were both trying
Ethel's
to do?
with her for that, too.
Yeah,
They're there for everything.
No, I think Lucy was alone in the vat.
But she was?
Okay.
All right, it's good somebody's paying attention.
All right,
well,
Corby.
this interview got out of control a little bit, but we're really glad to talk to you, Corby, as always.
Thank
Be
you.
well. Have a sea squirt on me.
Thank you very much, Corby Kummer.
Can you believe the sea squirt increased the weight of, was it the oyster bin, he said, from 5 pounds to 100
Because you
pounds?
saw a picture of it, and they were all encrusted all over the edge of the
very
oyster
sad
bin. You couldn't
story.
even see if there were any oysters inside. It was pretty disgusting.
Really pretty
Yeah, at
disgusting.
least the barnacles are no big deal compared
Horrible.
to these sea squirt things,
Nothing.
whatever they are.
Nothing like
Okay, we've been
this.
speaking with Corby Kummer, Executive Director of
Yeah.
the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a senior editor at The Atlantic, and senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science, Policy.
And
Corby.
policy,
And
too.
policy. Thank you, Corby.
you. You're
Okay,
welcome.
coming up after the quick break, as Jim said before.
This would be a good discussion.
The
I think.
definitive rules of office lunch etiquette. Jim, as we mentioned, no fish in the microwave is the first one, the top one. We'll open the phone and text lines about the do's and don'ts of office lunch, whether anyone actually leaves the office for a lunch break anymore. Remember that? We used to actually go out to lunch.
I actually don't
Does anybody
remember
ever do that anymore? You can weigh
Unlike
in
you, I
next.
have this job where I'm busy till 2 o'clock every day.
Okay, Jim is busy till 2 o'clock.
Yeah,
877-301-8970 is the number you're listening to. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming live at at youtube.com/GBH News.
I can't. Ow, stop. I can't breathe.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the top federal prosecutor in Massachusetts is speaking with reporters about the recent surge in ICE activity. Boston is celebrating the start of Pride Month with a flag raising at City Hall. And locals in Asheville, North Carolina are still tackling the housing crisis after Hurricane Helene forced thousands from their homes. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And Maine Maritime Museum in Bath, offering Burnt Island Lighthouse adventure cruises. Visitors can explore a historic lighthouse on a pristine island off the coast of Maine. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're at the library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. Before we continue, we left open an issue at the top of the show, which we now have an answer to. We were asking this young man, Marcelo Gomez da Silva, the 18-year-old, who was snatched out of his car on the way with some of his fellow players to a volleyball match, a Milford high school student. We were wondering what the status was, and in some original reporting by our colleagues here, Esteban Bustillos and Sarah Betancourt said that actually a federal judge on Sunday blocked federal immigration authorities from transferring Da Silva out of Massachusetts for 72 hours and actually prevented them from removing him out of the United States during the same 72 hours. So I don't know when the 72 hours ends, but at least there's a stay temporarily, and we will continue to bring you updates on the plight of this young man who did absolutely nothing wrong. Okay, as we introduced with Corby a couple of minutes ago, everybody but me knows you're not supposed to microwave fish in the communal office.
That is correct.
Okay, can I read this without you interrupting me? Thank you.
It's one of the office food quiz questions.
It is?
Etiquette foods quiz questions.
Okay,
yes.
What's the question?
Is your lunch so fragrant, not only that it's ruining the smell in the office, but it's changing the flavor profile of other food in the refrigerator?
It wasn't in the refrigerator. I brought it right in, stuck it right in the microwave. Okay,
well, you've
as I
left
was
it
saying,
in the refrigerator. What are you talking about? I've seen it in the refrigerator out there.
Maybe once or twice.
Smelling up all the coffee,
Washington Post felt
milk.
the need to dish out these definitive rules for office lunches, including, quote, as Marjorie said, maybe saving especially fragrant meals like fish or heavily spiced dishes for home. Maybe not. What do you make of office lunch rules? If you're stuck at your desk and you need to feed yourself, should there be limits on what you can eat so as not to offend your coworkers? Or is that a slippery slope? Don't tell me how to spice my lunches. Thank you very much. Let me ask you another couple of Is it okay to eat in your work area when other people are not eating but working? Is it okay to bring in a whole week's of lunches to the refrigerator and fill up the refrigerator? Can you eat while you're at a Zoom meeting at work? And I think arguably the most important issue, can you eat somebody else's food from the refrigerator?
Fish, eggs, and certain cheeses should be avoided in shared spaces according to the Bon Appetit rules.
Yeah, let me tell you what.
And you know what?
I feel like Marjorie Taylor Greene feels when it comes to Bon Appetit.
Yeah.
I don't give a damn.
We don't give a crap about your opinion.
Exactly. 877-301-8970.
You know why Trump won the election?
I wasn't
because when
aware
somebody brought in their smelly salmon, they accused the people who complained of food shaming. You're food shaming me.
Do you ever hear that expression before today?
No.
Someone was upset about that.
Yeah.
Because a coworker said to them, which you said to me, not as nicely as this coworker. Yep. This coworker said, the stuff really, you shouldn't bring this in. And the fish possessor, that would be me in this case, went to the meeting of the full team and said that he felt that he had been food shamed.
That's right.
And I want you to know, I feel like I have been food shamed by you. By the way, you know what's a really healthy food? Fish.
Yeah, fish.
And you know what?
Jim, you got a kitchen there in Cambridge. I mean, eat away.
I don't work in Cambridge. I work in Brighton and at the Boston Public Library.
Don't bring it into lunch. It is the number one thing, Jim. Number one thing. Followed distantly by eggs and some kind of German cheese, which I get you.
Limburger.
Yeah, stinks.
Stinks. If I cooked Limburger cheese or melted it ever here, never. Because I knew it would offend you. Fish is another story.
Oh, I tell you, the wafting from the fish in the microwave.
Okay.
And then they say, if you have to fumigate the microwave after you
don't have to fumigate, you clean it out.
No, well, that's essentially getting the smell out of there. That's a bad sign, too. You shouldn't have to do it. I mean, stick to normal things like a turkey sandwich or peanut butter and jelly or hummus or something like that.
Can I ask another question? You're avoiding all the key questions
What are the key questions?
Here's the last key question. How many days does a food item that a coworker has brought to work need to be in the refrigerator before it's in the public domain? My attitude is 2.
That's another thing.
I think people should date. I'm serious about this. Should date all their food. First of all, let me go back here. I have very strong feelings about this. I really strong feelings. If you don't put your name on your food, forget about it. That's number 1. Okay, I'm totally serious. Number 2. Not only should you put your name on it, you put the entry date, the date that you put it in the refrigerator, and when 48 hours from the entry date has passed,
all bets are off.
All bets are off. Anybody can eat that slop that is there.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
All right.
877-301-8970 is the
and you know what's another thing? I mean, somebody just texted in and said their favorite sport is going out to lunch. I've always gone out to lunch my entire career. I mean, that used to be kind of a fun time to go bond with your coworkers.
You and I haven't gone out to lunch in like 20 years.
Never go out to, well, we're working during lunchtime.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think working from home is kind of taken away from that. And the days you do go into the office, you're maybe not going out to lunch, because you're only in work a couple of days. You know what I mean?
Going out to lunch is fabulous. Would you not agree? But 2 o'clock's too late. You get out here at 2, you got to talk to your coworkers, whether you want to or not. You don't get out till 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Okay, we're not talking about us. We're talking about people that have a more normal, like 9 to 5 day.
You haven't answered my question. How long until food is in public domain? If it's clear, it hasn't even moved from the spot. What are you talking about?
Never?
So you believe in food
about
waste,
never?
obviously.
Well, I don't believe in people stealing other people's food.
It's not stealing.
Out of the refrigerator.
First 2 days is stealing. Okay. After 48 hours is not stealing. Okay. Billy in Holliston, you are first on Boston Public Radio. What are your, let's say, rules of office eating etiquette? What are they, please?
Hey, Jim and Marjorie. First time, long time.
Wow.
Appreciate it. Always love listening to you guys.
Thank you very much.
I cannot stand when people are sitting right next to me and the aroma from whatever it is, their salad or, it's not just the things that are cooked. It's things that have been sitting and festering there.
Festering.
And it's more than that. I have to go out to my car every single time during lunch. I can't go in the break room. I can't go anywhere near all these smells. It's horrendous. I can't handle it.
Now, let me ask you something, Billy. First of all, do you know, you were talking about the smell of it. Do you know, what's that thing that Jared suffers from? Misanthropia? What is it called?
People chewing. They hear people chewing.
There's some disease, whatever it is. People don't like...
misophonia.
I call it misanthropia. Okay, so Billy, how do you feel about the sound of someone chewing in your vicinity? Are you okay with that at work?
Well, the sound is neither here nor there. It's not great. It's not great, but I can handle it. It's the smell. But I mean, if they're a loud chewer, I mean, forget it. That's a whole nother thing.
That's a very good point.
Listen,
excellent call. First call, Billy, on a beautiful topic. Thank you.
This is from Sarah in Waltham.
What is it?
One of my roommates got caught in a rainstorm on the way to work and decided to put his wet socks in the office toaster oven to try to dry them out. The whole office was quickly subsumed in dirty sock smoke.
Can I ask you a question?
That is disgusting.
You know, you are one of the most transparent people I've ever known.
Yeah.
But be honest, you've never put your wet socks in the toaster at work? No. Never?
No.
How do you keep them dry?
I don't know. Why don't you try the microwave, Jim? They can mix in with your salmon crumbs.
Even I wouldn't
Listen to Donna on the road.
What Donna say?
I like to bring a tuna fish sandwich to work for lunch. I don't think it smells bad, but one of my coworkers, a man, thinks it's funny to meow.
That's funny.
Meow.
I understand what that is.
While I'm eating it.
Yeah, this is really interesting. You object to my salmon. The only food you ever bring in to share, which is delicious, if I say, because you're not much of a cook. You make the best, we know that, everybody knows this, best tuna fish ever.
Best tuna.
So why don't you object to the smell of the tuna?
Because it doesn't smell.
Exactly, my point.
But this person, it could be how you prepare the tuna fish, you know?
How would you make it smelly?
I don't know.
Put your wet socks in it or
mine
what?
Doesn't smell. It doesn't taste like fish either. I wouldn't eat it.
You don't want to know something?
It's kind of de-fishized.
Marjorie knows how much I love her tuna fish.
Yep.
Other than 2 days after my birthday, which was allegedly my birthday present, even though it was almost my next birthday, she hasn't brought tuna fish in like 2 years.
Okay.
I'm serious.
You know what the problem is making tuna fish?
No.
That this tuna fish smells all over your hands.
I thought it doesn't smell.
Well, the tuna, you're preparing it before you prepare it.
So why don't you wash your hands?
But you know what somebody says? If you put your hands on stainless steel, it takes the tuna smell away. That's a little
interesting.
Tips from Heloise that I've learned. You know what? It works.
No.
Phil from Danvers, thank you for
Phil
calling.
Hello, Phil from Danvers. How are you?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I think so, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, where I used to work, I'm retired. We had a gentleman, an old gentleman, who cooked in the office every day.
Yeah.
Really?
This guy was like a gourmet cook.
Yeah.
And the cubicle next to him was empty.
Yeah.
And that's where he had like a spare little college, on one of those dorm refrigerators.
Sure.
He had a hot plate, and he had all his utensils and plates there in the other cubicle.
Sure.
And he loved cooking with garlic.
Mm-hmm.
So he would think up the whole office, and nobody really gave him a hard time because he was an ex-Marine, and he could be sort of tough. But everything he cooked was great. One of the guys got so upset he was able to get from the shop area one of those big fans.
Mm-hmm.
He would turn it on all the time. And so anyway, his food was fantastic, and he was able to get away with it, cooking all the time. And one of the guys walked by him one day as he was cooking.
Yeah.
And this guy, Jim, was an older guy, he's bald and stuff. And one of the guys said, someone from the health department came by today. And he thought he was serious. He goes, well, what did he want? He said, he wants you to wear a hairnet while you're cooking tonight.
That's a good one. Phil, that's a really good story. That's a pretty good one. Phil, thank you for the call. Would you be upset if I was doing something with garlic here? Garlic's really smelly.
Well, I like the smell of garlic.
So it's only because you don't like fish?
And onions. Fish stinks. If you live in an apartment building and the people downstairs from you are cooking fish, you can smell it in your apartment. Or you're in two-family.
Excuse me. I cook it in my... What do you mean, though, your apartment downstairs? I cook it in my apartment. I love fish.
I'm sure
and most people except you like fish.
And then if you have fish that's got a little bit off, the whole thing, and it stinks for days. Marla in Shrewsbury, thank you for calling.
Hey, Marla.
Are you there, Marla?
Marla, say something. Marla was on my side. Don't hang up on her. We'll get back to her. This anonymous says, first of all, there are two texts that bear reading at least. Tommy and Haverhill, Jim sounds like he's doing a public service by cleaning out the fridge. And actually, that's how I feel. Anonymous says, Jim, my tax dollars paid for that microwave, and I don't want you putting fish in it. Actually,
there you go.
Excuse me, there you go. I bought the damn microwave.
You did buy the microwave.
And Margie said, I'll pay a half. I'm still waiting. I bought it 7 years ago.
That cute little refrigerator.
Yeah, did you pay me half for that?
I don't remember.
So, by the way, I paid for the refrigerator.
Okay.
I paid for the microwave.
Well, okay.
And you gave me nothing.
Let me ask you a question, Jim.
What?
Who cleans out the microwave?
Nobody cleans out the microwave.
When it has been cleaned, it's been me.
I know, anonymous, that you've never cleaned out. This segment could be called Jim is the a-hole. Fish smells. You're never allowed to eat other people's food unless you ask. Good God. Never dry your socks in a place where you put food. A-hole. Boy, that's a little angry there, anonymous.
Marla in Shrewsbury is back.
Hi, Marla. How are you?
You bring fish and eat it at work,
let's
so
find out
defend
what she
yourself
does.
here,
Go ahead.
Marla.
Go ahead.
Well, okay, here's the story.
Please.
I was trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah,
okay,
you're trying to lose weight.
Yep. For letting me talk.
Yeah.
But I was trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
Because, I decided, okay, I'm just going to go on a tuna fish eating regime.
Good for you.
So for lunch every day, I brought my packet of Star Kissed or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Tuna salad. And I didn't cook it.
Nope.
So forth and so on. But my office mates were very not happy with me eating my tuna fish at the same table that they were eating at.
So what happened?
So I lost the weight. I stopped eating tuna fish.
Oh, well, that's a beautiful ending.
Yeah, tuna's tricky. I think the reason mine doesn't smell is because it's drowned in mayonnaise. That's why it doesn't smell. And you have to get all the extra moisture out of it, either the oil or the water, so it's dry tuna. Maybe that was the problem, Marla.
Marla, you've been able to keep the weight off or what?
No.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
So have some tuna fish, and then you'll... Marla...
I know, I've thought about it, but it keeps reminding me of this.
No, bring it in. Bring it in. And Marla, that was an excellent and honest call. We really appreciate that.
Cleaning out the office fridge is another thing. Sometimes you go in there and you see food that has been there like for 6 months or something. It's really disgusting. Or somebody's left their milk there and you can smell the milk. That's something else that really stinks.
By the way,
is
you
milk.
accept that one of the pluses of leaving things in there a long time, many of the world's most important science experiments have been done on the mold from our refrigerator.
That's right.
Anonymous texter says, why do people anonymously text?
I don't know.
How come no one has ever mentioned burnt popcorn? I've been out of work I left work 11 years ago. I can still smell that horrible aroma.
Yeah, the burnt popcorn.
I have to say, I've made it here. You don't complain about that?
Well, because popcorn, until you burn it, smells pretty good. Right? The buttery popcorn cooking, that does smell good. When burned, that goes over the edge. Or cooking brownies, as somebody else said, smells really good. Cooking certain things smells really good. Some people can't stand the smell of coffee. I love the smell of coffee, but some people can't stand it.
Who doesn't like the smell? Name one person.
Somebody in the story.
Well, tell me who that is.
Well, they didn't say who they were. They were an anonymous texter, Jim.
Go ahead.
They were an anonymous texter.
So here's Heidi from Somerville, who raises a point that I'm embarrassed to say I hadn't thought about. I love fish. I was kind of close to agreeing with Marjorie until Jim said he bought the microwave. Go ahead and microwave that seafood, Jim. Heidi from Somerville, you're fabulous.
Yeah, well, you may have bought
my microwave.
But I had to carry it from the garage to the office here.
Maybe you did. Maybe you did. I fell over twice trying to carry it. So Marjorie had to have a couple of staff lift me up.
It weighs about 40
and
pounds.
She carried the microwave.
Jane
By the way, the microwave weighs about 5 pounds. And in all seriousness, can we talk about how you don't pay me back for anything? Who's brought the coffee in for the last 15 years?
What?
Who's brought the coffee in the last 15 years?
You brought a lot of coffee in.
How many times did you pay me back for it?
I don't know.
Did you pay me back for the refrigerator? Did you pay me back for the microwave?
I think I did pay you back for something, didn't I?
I
just
for
gave
something.
you $25 last week. What was that for?
That was for the $300 I donated to something, and you said you'd pay half. Okay. Let's go to Jane in Rhode Island.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Jane. Hello there.
Hi, guys. First time, long time.
Oh, my God. We love that. Hello.
We love you right back. My whole family does. I'm the youngest of 6, and because of that, we didn't have a lot of money, and I had a weird taste for egg salad. And the only real big thrill in my life was on field trip days. My mother would let me have a lunch of my choice, which was rare. And so it would always be egg salad. And in the 70s, it was hard to keep things cool in a brown bag. So I would go on a bus from Lincoln, Rhode Island to Plymouth or Sturbridge or wherever else we went, and it would sit in the bus in the sun until lunchtime, and then I'd get to eat it, and my friends could not understand it.
Jane, it's lucky he didn't kill you sitting in the sun all that time, you know?
Wait a second. Did the thing smell because it had been sitting there?
A long line of Irish people.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'm going to give you a tip that you may find not that appealing, but if you're an egg salad person, I'm a huge egg salad person. You want to try something really unusual, Jane? You up for it?
Well, yes.
Okay, well, meaning no, but I think you should try it. You take olives stuffed with pimento, slice them really, really thinly, and cover the egg salad in the sandwich with the olive. Is that something you'd be willing to try?
I like olives and I like egg salad, but I am pretty rigid. I'll give it a try.
Give it a try and text
your recommendation.
Get back to us, will you, Jane? It was an excellent first call. Thank you very much for making. You like egg salad too? I make a great egg salad.
Yeah.
You know what the key to egg salad is, if I may? Don't chop the egg as finely as, for example, you chop up the tuna fish.
Okay.
Larger chunks are really
the way to go.
Quite nice, yes.
Yeah, I think there must be something about mayonnaise that quells some of the, or quashes some of the smell, because egg salad with a lot of mayonnaise does not smell as bad as the eggs.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, so what is that about?
That's a very good question to ask a scientist.
Coating.
There are a lot of unemployed scientists. We're going to have one call us. By the way, here is Larry. Of course, Curb Your Enthusiasm always has a story that's relevant. Here's a situation when Larry's assistant borrows his bowl, a bowl he's eating out of, to feed her dog that she's brought to work. Here it is.
Your dog? He's eating out of my bowl.
Oh, I just got that bowl from the kitchen. I thought it was an office bowl.
It's an office bowl for humans, not for dogs.
I mean, I washed it at the end of the day with soap and then I dried it.
No, that's not enough. It needs to be sterilized. I can't. share a bowl with a dog.
I think I agree with that. Do you agree with that?
I think if you wash it in hot soap and water.
That's true. I've actually eaten out of bowls that the dogs have, and I realize it's stupid that I said that.
Yeah, you put down, I'm sure, water bowls for the dog when they come over and you're babysitting the dog, and then you probably use those dog.
Read that anonymous texter has an interesting point of view in yellow there.
I put my shoes in the microwave. It's called filet of sole.
Oh. Thank you for the
Listen to this one, though. This is a good point with everybody doing things on Zoom. People eating on Zoom is really disturbing. I have to cover their square with a Post-it note, says Barbara.
No, it's hard. How do you feel about that?
It doesn't really bother me.
If you don't chew with your mouth open, why do people care if
People
you're
are upset if you're drinking. I have my water bottle. I'm drinking from the water
They
bottle
upset
all the
if you're
time.
drinking? And
some people get upset about that.
Who said they're upset about it?
One of these texters.
Why should you name names?
Well, Jim, they're anonymous texters, so I can't name them. Not everybody leaves their name, although I would like it if you did.
Here's a good one, by the way, which shows your bias. Anonymous texter, our sense of smell about food is cultural, Marjorie. They didn't say Marjorie.
That's a great point.
Having worked for years in an elementary school, kids from different cultures would bring foods from their own cultures, sushi, curries, etc. Adults like Marjorie from different cultures adults like me should be allowed to bring their leftovers of the food they eat at home and not have people like Marjorie food shame them.
Well, it's a big deal. And also, it's very upsetting for the kids, too, because I told you the story before the show about a good friend of mine who came here from Italy as a teenager.
What happened?
And, of course, his mother sent him off to school the first day with some eggplant parmesan, and the olive oil is kind of...
seeping through the thing?
Seeping through the back. And he took out the eggplant parmesan, and everybody's like, what is that? They all made fun of him. So, when you're a teen, you want to kind of fit in. So he made his mother stop at the Stop and Shop for peanut butter and jelly for his next day at school.
Well,
this is somebody just saying the same
not somebody.
thing.
It's from Jamie.
It was from Jamie.
Read
okay.
it.
That was me growing up. He's Italian. Jamie is. I had to go to school every day with eggplant parm, meatballs, and garlic stuff, chicken cutlets, and pasta with garlic. They made fun of him. But I didn't care. I had the meatballs and had a little cup of milk. Screw them.
They had a little cup of milk, meaning that's what they got stuck with while he's eating meatballs.
Yeah, good for you, Jamie.
That is
My friend
beautiful.
Tony, he was very upset about it. He wanted to fit in.
Well, you know why,
Jamie's
by the
a
way, the true
trailblazer.
story as to why Jamie locked himself in the bathroom for 4 hours a couple of years ago? Because he's being food shamed by one of his coworkers.
Post-traumatic trauma.
It was post-traumatic meatball trauma.
Okay.
Chef Bill, you're in Pelham and you're calling, and it's wonderful to talk to you. Hello there. What's up, Chef?
Hey, Jim, Marjorie. How are you today?
We're very well, thank you. What's up?
Good. Well, it's kind of a tangential thing, but all tied in with the smells and the office of the food.
Yeah.
I think actually this could be an Am I the A-hole segment.
It could. It could.
Yeah, because a few years ago, actually many years ago, I did a cooking demo at a retail store in Boston on Comm Ave, and it was after hours with their best clients. I did shrimp and scallops. They loved it. They had a great time. They kept talking about it until 2 days later. They told me the store still smelled like seafood.
Yeah.
So I did it. I was early in my career. It was great fun, but I got to side with Marjorie and all the other folks. The smells in the office, they're kind of sacred.
What kind of chef are you, Chef Bill?
Personal chef. I do a lot of cooking demos. Actually, a new series of ADHD classes, people for cooking with ADHD.
Wow.
Which is great. I'm doing that online. That's just a new series I'm starting up.
If you want to publicize your business, what's your website?
Sure. ChefBill.com.
Well, that's fairly easy. ChefBill.com. Yeah. Chef Bill, good to talk to you. Thanks so much for your call. We appreciate it.
Somebody pointed out that you're the person who will not. Isn't it odd that those who will eat food off the floor are those who adhere to the office do not eat fish etiquette? That would be me, I guess. And those who will not eat food off the floor will heat their salmon in the microwave. That's you, Jim.
No, I would eat. No, I never said I wouldn't eat food off the floor. I wouldn't eat whatever you drop. Marjorie, what is it you dropped last week on the carpet at the library?
Fruit.
Yeah, it was wet fruit. And I have to say, I would not eat wet fruit with carpet fiber in it.
It's delicious.
Marjorie wasn't going to pull the carpet fiber out of the wet fruit. That's
I was
going to
pull the carpet fiber.
No, you weren't,
actually.
It
was a juicy piece of pineapple, and I decided to
Let me tell you something. On an unrelated note, since you brought that up, among the saddest things, whenever I have a really expensive meal, like a steak, for example, you decide to go for it, and you cut a piece, and you're cutting it carefully, and you drop a big piece on the floor at the restaurant. Is there anything more upsetting than that?
Well, I think it's incredible that when we're breathing in so much crap from the air and the cars, and we're eating so much plastic, we get a credit card worth of plastic in our bodies and all that kind of stuff.
That's a good point.
You get so freaked out by a little piece of fiber.
So I
piece
should
of
have
fruit.
eaten the steak.
I would do it, Jim.
Okay, fine.
I would do it. The chances are it's not going to hurt you.
Okay, we're out of time.
Oh, we're
Marjorie.
out of time.
No, we're out
That's
of
too
time.
bad.
Yeah.
It's always, just as we get going, we're always done.
By the way, I assume people know, starting today, 11 to 12, we're on NEPM in Western Massachusetts. So if you have any friends in that part of the state, please let them know. 88.5, 11 to 12 every day.
You know what several people are pointing out?
No, I don't.
Nobody would complain if you were microwaving bacon.
Well, because everybody loves the smell of bacon.
I guess you would if you were a vegetarian or an anti-meat
I don't
person.
know about that.
But bacon does smell pretty good,
How
doesn't
about
it?
bacon on a piece of salmon? How about that for a nice combo?
Okay, we are done. Thank you very much for tuning in. And thank you for the gang from Western Mass for tuning in too. We much appreciate it. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be live at the Boston Public Library. We'll talk with CNN's John King, the ACL Rose, Carol Rose, Lee Peltzman of the Boston Foundation, and our expert on everything having to do with Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson. That, of course, would be Sports Authority, Trenny Casey. We want to thank our crew. Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John the Claw Parker, Maddie Gaia runs our YouTube stream, and our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Stay tuned to The Culture Show with Jared Bowen, which starts right after us on 89.7 GBH. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Can I tell you something before we go here?
What?
You know, I'm still getting adjusted to our fairly new music like this. This is like this is not who, are we this upbeat? Let's face it. Listen to the music for 10 seconds. Exactly, listen to it. Exactly. Da, 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 da. It's not who we, I'm sorry, it's just not, the happiness quotient is at variance
we need
with
more
who we
of
are.
a dirge sort of thing.
Okay, I'm sorry to digress. I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
See you
Thank
tomorrow.
you for tuning
Bye.
in, and enjoy the lovely weather. Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts,